birthdays I'm not aware of, but happy birthday to both Sue and Bob. We're going to get started with our committees. So first up this morning is Planning and Development Committee, and Director Knodel is now the new chair of that committee. So I'm going to turn things over to Director Knodel. Go ahead, please.
Thank you very much. I'll be looking for a motion to approve the agenda for the Planning and Development Committee. Katie, primary, George, seconding. Thank you very much. All in favor? All opposed? Systems from Brittany Tuttle and Nancy Henderson. CAO, do you have any comments before we turn it over to people?
Not too many, Mr. Chair. This is our review of the regional growth strategy, which we've been working on now for the better part of the year. We awarded the contract Urban Systems in August, I believe, and they have a great presentation, and there is an administrative report, so I think we just turn it over to the delegation.
Thank you very much. Welcome, Brittany, and
all right. Thank you very much, Madam Chair and members of the board. I'm Nancy Henderson. I'm from Urban Systems, and I'm here with my colleague Brittany Tuttle, as mentioned. We're very happy to be presenting before you today. And I'm just going to share my screen with you so that you can see the presentation. Okay, just 1 second here. Just 1 second. I'm just going to have to move screens around a little bit. Okay, are you seeing the presentation?
Yeah.
We can see your, oh, okay, there, that's good. We can see your notes before, but it's good now.
Okay, perfect. All right, so I'm going to run through a fairly quick presentation for you today, and then we're going to turn the floor over to you because we are looking for your feedback in this meeting. And so just to give you an overview of what we're going to cover, we're going to go over the purpose and background of the regional growth strategy, the scope of the project, and we're focusing in on one of the major areas that's been identified for review is the regional growth areas. And then we'll go over the next steps of the project. So as you all know, the regional growth strategy, it's really some people refer to it as like the granddaddy of all plans. It's really what is the highest level plan at the regional district level, and then is really implemented through OCPs and other land use plans. It's a 20-year plan. It's legislated by the Local Government Act, which provides some sort of strict outlines on what it's to include, and it's really to have a regional focus. It's a plan that promotes a human settlement pattern that is socially, economically, and environmentally sustainable, and that comes directly from the Local Government Act. The regional growth strategy that we are reviewing is for the South Okanagan, so it doesn't include all of the areas of the RDOS. The last update was in 2015, and it was adopted in 2017, and it was considered a minor update. So basically the legislation, it's a 20-year vision, but the intent is that it's reviewed every 5 years. And as noted, the plan area does not include all of the RDOS and does include areas A, C, D, E, F, and I. as well as Osoyoos, Oliver, Penticton, and Summerland. It has a very broad-based vision statement, which really reflects the legislation as well. And you can see it's really about being sustainable and balancing environmental, social, and economic considerations, all around a high quality of life and sense of community in the Okanagan, or in the community. So very high level vision. The key items for this review is to update the regional profile and demographics as the South Okanagan is changing rapidly, and it's important to kind of have an idea of how things are changing and review the profiles, and also look to the future and look at growth projections. There's a housing needs report that's also being completed right now. And so that the part of the intent of the review would be to reflect the findings of that report in the revised policy. Looking also for implementation opportunities and to make the regional growth strategy more of an action-oriented document. As well as the growth area mapping, which I discussed as being a key part of the review, and we're going to talk about that later today. As well as, updating policies to reflect changes in the last 5 years. And that might be through new plans, new senior government initiatives, and just aligning it with the current times, essentially. And just moving into the primary and rural growth areas. The primary growth areas essentially sewer or water. They could have existing commercial, industrial, or park development, or where development is being predetermined through zoning, existing zoning essentially being in place. The regional growth areas, really the intent is to promote a more compact and sustainable development pattern to facilitate population growth in the region. And the idea is, when you have compact development, it's generally more cost effective, not only in the initial development stages, because servicing sprawling development is very expensive, but also the maintenance of that infrastructure over time. Reducing commute times of sprawling development and commuting increases greenhouse gas emissions. So this is also an initiative that's being put down from the province to meet their climate action goals as well. And limiting sprawl and promoting healthy lifestyles and protecting the environment and agricultural land. So you can see those are related to quite high level goals. And then so really the intent, I think, is also changed from the initiation of the regional growth strategy. Back in 2011, there was some sort of feeling of growth being spread throughout the South Okanagan, where it's shifting now to be more into developed areas and reducing sprawling development patterns. So this is a map that's included in your regional growth strategy, and it illustrates where the primary growth areas are and the rural growth areas. Just right off the bat, this is one of the things that your staff has identified early on in the process to change this map so that it's more clearly understood the differences between primary and rural growth areas. The really only thing that's depicting the difference is the size of the dot. So we'll do that as part of this review to improve the mapping at a glance, if you will. And we've met with member municipality planners as well as their regional district staff to essentially talk about potential changes with the rural growth areas, and maybe some removal of those growth areas to reflect recent OCPs that have been completed, or other public processes that have identified maybe that some of these rural growth areas are not so desirable. And that's something that we want to talk about today, and it's definitely a key part of the scope of this project. So some of the rural growth areas that have been identified for change and potentially removal include Greta Ranch, Gallagher Lake, Willow Beach, and Osoyoos Mountain Estates. There's definitely been some discussion about other growth areas, some of which might, have an OCP that has yet to be updated within the last 5 years, where these areas usually have had their OCP updated, or there's been another planning process that's identified the desire to remove a rural growth area, such as in Gallagher Lake. The other rural growth areas, again, just sort of mention that they would sort of stay the course, is sort of where staff's position is, and we certainly want to hear from you today as to your thoughts. And really, we want to, through the purpose of this review is to clarify expectations about the intensity of future development and servicing in those areas. So clarify the policy, make it more defined. This will help the board and staff and also citizens when they're considering the options that they have for their land. If we can set up that clear direction, it will be easier for staff to process those applications and for the board to make decisions. And really the intention is to promote a sustainable regional development pattern that focuses growth within the primary growth areas where there are services, not only infrastructure, but also commercial services and schools, with the idea of reducing sprawl and commute times. So I'm going to turn the floor over to you guys because we really want to hear from you as we embark on this process, with questions and comments about what you think of removing these rural growth areas that have been suggested, or potentially your thoughts on other areas for consideration or policy that you'd like to see changed. But before I do that, just for the flow of the presentation, I'm just going to go into the next steps and where we go from here. And then I'm going to come back to this question. So really the next steps in the process that we have are, we're going to, at some point in the coming days or weeks, introduce this project publicly on your Regional Connections website with some information for the public. We'll be continuing to meet with the Technical Advisory Committee and having meetings where we're really getting the input from the member municipality staff and the RDOS staff regarding policies and changes that they'd like to see as part of this review. And then we'll come back to this committee with an updated regional profile so you can get a look at the demographic changes that are taking place, as well as start diving into potential changes to other policy areas. And we'll be doing that in the new year. So now I'd like to turn it over to the committee and just hear from you regarding your thoughts regarding the rural growth areas, or potentially the regional growth strategy review in general.
Okay, we'll go back to Director Knowle. And if I could just suggest, Director Knowle, there may be comments as well from our planning manager, Chris Garish.
Thank you, Michael. So back there with no comments there. All right, directors, any?
Chris.
Is Chris on yet?
Yeah.
No questions from the directors? Director Holmes?
Director Knowle, there's a few on the list: Monteith and Pendergraft, Roberts.
Can we just have the screen come down so we can see each other?
Okay, let's start with
Yeah, if we could remove the presentation from the screen would help. And Director Knowle, you could start with Director Monteith, then Pendergraft.
very well, Director Monteith.
To the chair, I guess I'm wondering about a specific area that I represent. They currently have an active rezoning going on for part of their community, but there is a plan for a second phase there as well. Is it possible to look at that second phase now, or is that already predetermined based on the process that they're currently doing? I'm referencing Twin Lakes.
regards to the Twin Lakes application, I think that's something that we'll have to refer to the staff on if they would like us to address that during the review.
We're having a hard time hearing you, Brittany.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
That's better.
I said in regards to the review of the Twin Lakes application and whether or not that would be incorporated into the RGS update, and that's something that we will have to defer to staff on. They would like us to review that.
I can, I mean, from staff's perspective, the Twin Lakes proposal currently, as well as their additional phases, is all occurring within the rural growth area boundary that was established in 2016 when the OCP was reviewed. Now, if there's a change to the designation of Twin Lakes as a growth area as part of the RGS, there's still subsequent steps that would have to be taken to amend the OCP later on to make any changes to that. But that's all, I suppose, up for discussion as part of the RGS review itself.
You're on mute, Director Monteith.
So it is, sorry, to follow up. So it is possible to look at phase 2.
Director Canoldo, we're having a hard time hearing your hearing you. It keeps cutting out. Do you want me to field the questions for you? You're freezing a little bit, so if that's okay with you, I'll just work through the questions. So Director Monteith, did you want to do your follow-up, please?
Yes, thank you. So I guess I am curious about phase 2 Twin Lakes proposal and whether that's something that we could look at during this process. So just a thought.
Mr. Garish, could you answer that one?
Yeah, sure. We can certainly look at the appropriateness of Twin Lakes as a rural growth area as part of this process. But really, there's nothing that would be able to force the property owner to bring forward their subsequent phases of their development on their property as part of the RGS review. I believe we have a rough understanding of what it's going to look like based on the current rezoning proposal, and that could certainly inform discussions around Twin Lakes as a growth area. If that answers the question.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to Director Pendergraft.
Thank you. Through the chair. I've got the two rural growth areas in electoral area A, the Willow Beach and Osuyas Mountain Estates, and I'm not opposed to them coming out as a growth area, but I do want to be assured that the development that is scheduled for those areas, the existing zoning, and in the case of Willow Beach, they've got existing zonings but want to change the zoning to something less dense. So I just want to make sure that those changes aren't going to be problematic in the future if we remove them as a growth area.
Mr. Garish, any comments on that?
Yeah, I think it's safe to say the staff are on the same page. I don't believe that we would be putting forward subsequent recommendations to downzone parcels based on the removal as a growth area. We view the growth area as an indication from the board that it prefers to see future growth beyond what may be existing under current zoning at certain locations. And we share concerns about the appropriateness of that happening at Willow Beach and Anarchist. If it is removed as a growth area, we don't think that necessarily means that they have to lose their existing zoning as well. So I think we're on the same page.
Okay, thank you. Director Roberts, go ahead, please.
Thank you to the chair. This is a pretty open philosophical question, because I'm just trying to understand the greater reaches of the the strategy. You've got hard lines around the borders on that. How do you relate your plans, or as you move forward, with the effects of, let's say, resource extraction, things that may be just on the outside of those lines, but may in turn affect the sustainability of those developments? Do you encompass those kinds of areas? And the same idea, if you have a growth area that in and of itself, its growth strategy may affect an adjacent area. For instance, like Apex sits within 2 watersheds of my area. So when we're looking at different ideas, do we look at plans in regards to the effect outside of those borders when we're dealing with issues within those borders of the strategy?
Okay, Chris, any comments on that?
Well, I mean, for the most part, to the extent that we've drawn boundaries around communities such as Apex, it's been done in a way that incorporates existing development. And so the question that we feel, I guess the issue that you've raised, I mean, for us, that comes into play when we're dealing with proposals that are seeking to rezone or redesignate parcels outside of, well, growth areas or established communities. And yes, we do at that point look at, the impacts on the environment, traffic networks in the area, if there's geotechnical hazards related to flood, wildfire, or slope instability. But that's more or less at the OCP and rezoning stage, not necessarily at the RGS. The RGS, as you indicated earlier in your statements, Director Roberts, has a much higher strategy that's kind of trying to set the table for where development happens. The nuts and bolts of how that development will actually happen on the ground is more or less handled at rezoning stage or subsequently at subdivision stage when the servicing has to go in.
Okay, thank you. I'll go to CIO Newell for comment.
Thanks, Madam Chair. So I know Director Roberts knows this, but the regional growth strategy is really a sub-regional growth strategy. It only applies to the Okanagan Valley. It doesn't apply in the Similkameen at all. So when we're looking at this, typically when we get into discussions about the regional growth strategy, it is about where development can occur. And those were the most difficult parts of the discussion when the growth strategy was first adopted back in 2010. And Chris mentioned this, where we ended up at that point was we had what we described at that point as blobs. And the boundaries of the growth areas are not clearly defined, but I think conceptually we're looking at contiguous development. So if there is development around one of our primary growth areas, we're going to want to make sure that it's a natural growth, that there's no big gaps in between current development and where the new development is contemplated. And similarly, in our rural growth areas, we want to try and concentrate the growth where the high density population is occurring. And when we initially developed the growth strategy back in that period between 2003 and 2010, when it was finally adopted, we did take into account active development applications at the time, and now that's changed because development changes with the economy, and the picture is a little bit different now than it was. So it's a good time to talk about what's a primary growth area, what's a secondary growth area, and where development probably should wait so that it is contiguous. The other part of this, and we don't do a lot of enforcement on the regional growth strategy. Every once in a while, we'll get an application where we don't think it fits, and we'll come in and we'll advise the board that we think it contradicts or contravenes the regional growth strategy. But it's not really an enforcement type of document. It's one of those cascading processes where it sets out some policies, and then it's really identified more clearly in the official community plans and the zoning bylaws as to how that's going to be enforced. but we don't have a good track record of enforcing on the regional growth strategy. So where we have pointed out possible contradictions over the past few years, I know the board has difficulty rejecting an application just because it's outside the block. So I'm hoping that that's where we can clarify our future decision-making capability when we talk about more clearly identifying what's primary, what's secondary, and then just make sure it's something that the board can accept. If there are, these are all good principles about developing in high-density areas and contiguous development and having services where we want growth to occur. Make sure it's something that you can accept, though, so that when we get into actual applications, it doesn't seem foreign that we're trying to impose this on developers. And I'm hoping that's what comes back when we, after we go through consultation and get a report back from the consultants, is that it's going to be easier for us to come up with how we're going to ensure compliance.
Okay, thank you. Director Holmes, you're next, please.
Yeah, thank you. I think the CEO partially just answered my question, but I was just wondering if someone could briefly go through each of the areas that are being recommended for removal and briefly explain the rationale for removing those areas. And I have a second question as well about what the impact is on people who own land in each of those areas. What would, by removing them?
Sure.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I can take a stab at it. So with the RGS being adopted in 2010, every subsequent OCP review for the electoral areas has addressed the issue around the rural growth areas. So the first one after the adoption was Area H. So obviously because it's in the Similkameen, there's no implications. But that was followed by what's now electoral area I. And within that community, we drew the boundaries around Kaleden, Apex, and I think, and Twin Lakes, obviously, yes, Twin Lakes. So those are the three. No issues raised at that time with the suitability of those communities as growth areas. But when we subsequently moved over and reviewed the electoral area F OCP, as part of that process, there was concerns raised about the suitability of Greta Ranch as a growth area. And it was built into the OCP that when the RGS was reviewed, there was a desire to have Greta Ranch looked at in terms of continuing designation as a growth area. But conversely, the West Bench wasn't designated as a rural growth area, and there's policy statements within the plan that speak to examining the suitability of having West Bench subject to certain servicing being provided, designated as a rural growth area. And now with the Area A OCP, although it's not hasn't been before the board for first reading yet, we do have a fairly complete draft prepared, and there are policy statements in there that speak to reviewing the suitability of Greta Ranch. What am I talking about? Willow Beach and Anarchist Mountain, the old Regal Ridge development as well. And I will put in I will say, like, we did do the area plan for Gallagher Lake in Area C, and even though there's no specific policies in the OCP that speak to the suitability of that rural growth area, there were a lot of concerns raised by residents in the area that they didn't want to see growth happen in their community, despite being a growth area. And I think that was largely in relation to concerns about existing communities being potentially redeveloped and people being forced out either through the redevelopment process itself, because they might be leasing land in the community, or just land values or whatnot. So there are some concerns expressed about Gallagher Lake, which is why it was referenced earlier in your presentation.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions or comments? I see Director Monteith. Go ahead, please.
To the chair. So how do we allow, well, how do residents say that they don't support densification in an area when I have residents in Twin Lakes saying that they don't support something? Like, it's sort of, I don't know, it feels contradictory that we're removing some areas, but not other areas that are not supporting it as well. But yet, I'm challenged with that it seems not a fair process if we're not considering all concerns of residents.
Chris, are you able to take that one?
Sure. I think as a starting point for the RGS review, we feel comfortable with the OCPs that have actually identified communities for potential review and removal as growth areas. But that's not to say we can't look at any others. I mean, certainly they could all be on the table for discussion as part of the review process. So if there's concerns about other ones where the OCP is silent on reviewing them as rural growth area, I don't think that necessarily excludes them. It's just, you know, at a staff level, we have a higher confidence with those OCPs that have actually identified communities, which is why we flagged those for your attention today.
Okay, thank you. Director Pendergraft, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Through the chair. This is kind of referencing what the CAO had mentioned in regards to the growth boundaries around municipalities. I think those need to be addressed as well. What's kind of happening without a growth boundary or an area around a municipality is people buy areas in the rural area or property in the rural area and then say, well, I'll add it to the town. That's still sprawl. There needs to be some designation around a municipality, as well as we've got now around some of these rural growth areas.
Thank you. Any other questions or suggestions at this time? Yes, CAO Newell.
Well, I'll just say, as far as the areas designated or identified right now to come out as rural growth areas, I know back in 2000, in that 2008 to 2010 period, Senator Fitzpatrick was very anxious to develop Greta Ranch. And of course, the economy changed on him. It was going to be an expensive development. So I don't think there would be much of an objection right now. And the Willow Beach one was also very hot, had a really ambitious development plan at the time. And again, the economy changed, and it's changed, and the property's changed hands. So, and it's zoned for development, and I think that there is room for development there. I mean, there was the Northwest Sewer that was put in order to, so they are sort of available to be serviced. So it's really about freshening up the growth strategy right now. It's about taking a look at what's happened in those 10 years and where, because we are a representative democracy, I mean, you take into account possible future development, and you have to make the decision as to, as a board, where you want to see growth occur. And that's where you have that discussion amongst yourselves as to where you think growth should occur within the Okanagan Valley. And there's other variables. I mean, there's the ALC, and there's how we're developing commercially, and where we want to see industrial growth occur. So there's lots of factors to take into account, and certainly the development industry would be one of those important factors to consider.
Okay, thank you. I'm not seeing anybody else with a hand up at this time. Director Knodel, do we have good connection with you at this time for you to take back over the...
I don't know if I've got the audio, but I seem to have lost time being.
We can hear you well.
I might want to just... Okay, well, if you had all the questions, then we can move on to our second item. And I'd like to thank Brittany, Ms. Tuttle, and Ms. Henderson for their presentation. And we'll move to our next item, the Okanagan Growth Strategy Bylaw Review. Tia, on that?
Yes, so we're just looking at the South Okanagan Regional Growth Strategy bylaw review for information only report.
I think that's what Mr. Garish already discussed.
Yeah, so unless there's any questions out of that report, Director Knodel, then we would be wrapping up.
Okay, then I'll be looking for a motion to come out of this committee.
Moved and seconded.
Thank you. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Director Knodel. I understand you have fiber optics, so we're going to try and make use of those better in the future for your chairing. So thank you. Thank you, everyone, for your patience on that. We are going to move on now to Environment and Infrastructure Committee, and I'll turn things over to Chair Gettins. Go ahead, please.
I just got a notice from her she's having issues and asked if you could take over.
Oh, okay. I believe we've received a note that Director Gettins is having some technical issues, and so I can go ahead and proceed then. All right, so looking for a motion to approve the agenda for Environment and Infrastructure, moved by Director Bush, seconded by Director Robinson. All in favor? Thank you. Hands can come down. Anybody opposed? Okay, that carries. We'll go to item B, Clean BC Organics Infrastructure and Collection Program for information. CAO.
Thanks, Madam Chair. So the solid waste management plan has contemplated the collection of food waste from curbside for a number of years now. And some of our member municipalities are already there. They're already doing that and doing it well. It is probably our biggest opportunity to reduce the amount of waste going into our landfills. And we are reliant on grants. So there is a grant right now that's available, the Clean BC Organics and Infrastructure and Collection Program, that we think will allow us to start moving in that direction. And I think we have a presentation that we want to make on this, but the idea is that we want to make, and later on today in your board meeting, there are two reports, one to submit an application under this program for the collection of food waste, and then for areas A and C, because we have our facility almost operational in Oliver, so we can accept food waste down there. And then another grant application to start the development of the Campbell Mountain Landfill Organics Facility that would do the north part of the Okanagan. I'm not sure who's presenting on this, Madam Chair, but we'll turn it over to.
Is it Andrew or
operations?
Andrew's got his hand up. So Andrew, are you presenting? Go ahead, please.
You have his PowerPoint in?
I don't, but I have the agenda I can share, which has the PowerPoint.
So Andrew's still on mute if he is the one presenting.
Okay,
there we go.
you hear it now?
Yep, go ahead, please.
Okay, I've actually got Cam here sitting in my seat, so I'll let Cam start off with us. All right, Danny, can I share my screen? I'll show you how to do that. Okay. Sure. Okay, you should be seeing a screen now. Cam's your way.
Great, thank you. So thank you for having us here today. Sorry for any technical difficulties, if there is any. Can I just see from the chair, do you mind putting up your hand if you can hear me?
Yeah, we're all good.
Good to go. All right, so today's presentation is on the Clean BC Organics Infrastructure and Collection Program grant. The grant itself is $25.7 million total funds from the province of BC. It allows for 2/3 coverage for two types of activities. One is a new food waste compost site, and that's capital funding only. And then there's a new grant we haven't seen before, which is a new residential food waste curbside collection. And that would allow for the funding of collection carts, kitchen catchers, and contracted education services. So under the Campbell Mountain Landfill Service Area, we're already applied for one grant, but we're thinking of applying for this grant as well as a backup. And that would be for a new food waste compost facility. The grant itself could be applied to either properties that we currently own, one being the Campbell Mountain Landfill, which we're leasing from the city of Penticton, or 1313 Grayback Mountain Road, which we own outright, but still has to go through public consultation before we could place a compost site there. So the feasibility study, as we already applied for in other grants, is being completed, and we're ready to apply for this grant as required. But it does require that all construction be completed by March 31st, 2024, which is an obligation of that grant. As well, what we're looking at is for the electoral areas A and C. The Oliver Landfill has a grant to complete residential compost site by March 31st, 2022. The grant would support supplying standardized bins to all homes for food waste collection. The support would also support education on new programs, but it does require that the service be commenced by March 31st, 2024. And we already have consultation already scheduled for 2021 with the public on this exact process, as the Oliver site, the compost site, is in the early design phase for construction next year. So what we want to see with this grant is a collaboration. The Oliver Landfill compost site has the potential to service the town of Oliver, the town of Osoyoos, and the Osoyoos Indian Band, along with electoral areas A and C for residential food waste collection. Summerland is doing a similar program at their landfill for their residents. And so what we'd like to do is collaborate on both the grant and the program rollout for the benefit of all parties in the regional district. The grant requires that the board be aware of any borrowing that may come up. Right now, we're not sure if we're going to have to borrow. In terms of the solid waste management plan, as it's in the plan already, if there is the requirement to borrow for longer than 5 years, since it's in the plan, we wouldn't require further public assent. We also have reserves and fees available for funding, and the consultation required for both projects is ongoing. We'll be focused on that for 2021. And the grant application is not a commitment to borrowing or financing, but what this is today is an endorsement of the projects to proceed. And so the grants today, as they'll be going to the board, what we're asking the board to consider is approving and endorsing these projects for these to go to consultation. And with the grant application deadline being in the middle of January, we need to get our ducks in a row now to be able to apply for that grant. And it was a speed up of our process. We hope to go to consultation first, then make decisions after. Basically now the cart's before the horse. And we're now having to provide a grant application based on what we think the public might want. We'll be focused in on ensuring that the grant has lots of room for us to get the best equipment possible. But what the actual decisions will be going through public consultation and board approval. So we need to get a grant proposal in, and this allows us to proceed as per the grant requirements. Any questions? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Cam. Are there any questions? Yes, Director Knodel, go ahead, please.
This works. Is there any information to see if in the rural areas, whether food waste pickup, whether we're getting enough demand to actually justify the cost? I can see it being viable, but I'm a little concerned that the general rural area would not use the service as most farms compost anyhow. Do you have any information on that, please, sir?
Yeah, so the way we see compost is food waste. And so we don't see a lot of yard waste pickup from farms. That's true. We understand that. That's why we only in Area C and Area A collect yard waste once a month. Food waste, though, is pretty universal, depending on every property. So that includes meat, cooked foods, stuff that's really hard to compost on your own property. Even if people have the back 40, a lot of people are concerned about composting at home, so we don't see a big pickup. A maximum that the Metro Vancouver Regional District found was about 30% of people compost. We might be slightly higher with our larger properties, but we do see a lot of food waste going into our landfills. Right now, we just completed the first iteration of our waste composition study. So we'll start to see what kind of numbers we're getting from the residential sector in terms of food waste. But in other communities, they collected between 20 to up to 30% of their waste by weight, not by volume, but by weight, was food waste. So we expect to see that coming through for both the rural and the municipal groups that we collect from, as food waste is still a heavy component of that waste. As well, beyond the actual, what they put in there, this material creates methane. Methane gas is a greenhouse gas as well. So there's significant environmental benefits to removing that material. So we're looking at that as another option for the board to consider.
Okay, thank you. Director Roberts, go ahead, please.
Thank you to the chair. And as a follow-up to Director Knodl's statement, when we're looking at the furthest direction out, Old Headley Road with curbside pickup, is this something that, for instance, you would pick up at the same time? We've got a contract coming up in regards
just hang on. I just have to mute.
Director Robinson, we can hear your call.
Sorry.
There we go.
There we go.
Sorry, Director Roberts, go ahead.
So my question is based on, looking, would the curbside pickup be something that, let's say, when we come to contract, and I believe it's 2022, it may be 2023, with the service contractor for curbside, is this something we'd be looking at, like a vehicle goes out and picks up the regular curbside plus has a separation to be able to pick up the green waste? Or are we looking at most likely another vehicle having to go out and pick up green waste at a different time? Just in regards to the concerns around cost, but understanding that this is an important project.
To speak to Director Roberts' point, so right now for the curbside collection program, we can only collect from Area A and C, as that would be the only site that we presently have that can compost residential food waste. So that's the focus of today's meeting. To speak to the entire regional district, our solid waste management plan calls for curbside collection of organics. That is a call. It doesn't mean it's a requirement, but it is something for us to consider. In terms of all rural areas, what we would consider most likely to be, and this would be what we would bring to public consultation, is the idea of collecting organics every week. So we would collect food waste every week. And then the truck, which we currently run now, which is called a split truck, would alternate between garbage one week and recycling the other week. And this is what most communities across BC have considered. And this allows us to use the existing infrastructure if that's the case. The current curbside collection contract expires July 2025. So in terms of the way the grants are going and the potential for us to be able to build one for Campbell Mountain, which would then be able to service the Area G area, Area B, Karamias, rural Penticton areas and Penticton, then we'd be looking at that coming in 2024. So how we best do that, we do have time to do consultation on that, but in general, communities would allow for the collection of organics weekly and every other week collection of garbage and every other week collection of recycling, matching the majority of programs in BC.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead,
Thank
Director
you.
Robinson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd be happy to put a motion on the floor to go ahead with this.
Director Robinson, thank you. That's coming forward on the board agenda later today.
Okay, thanks very much.
Anybody else with a question or comment on this? Director Pendergraft, go ahead, please.
Thank you. So from my understanding of the explanation from Cam on Tim's question is that there will be no additional costs for the collection of this in areas A and C. It's going to be the existing trucks doing the run, or will there have to be an amendment to the existing contract?
To answer the question, we don't know. Right now, we are in negotiations with Waste Connections of Canada to get pricing. That includes the town of Oliver, the town of Vesuvius, and the District of Summerland. We are in negotiations with them right now to see what the factors might be on this. So that's an unknown in terms of collection. They believe they can use the existing vehicles. Whether those vehicles might need to be upgraded, what those costs might mean for the local area, we'll have to explore. The problem that we see with this grant application is timing. We don't have all the answers now, but the deadline for application is January 12th, 2021. So we can get the money in hand and make the decisions after. If we don't apply for this grant, we don't have the money in hand. So our position is that we apply for the grant. We put in a reasonable, probably a very high amount for what we expect the cost to be, knowing that through consultation and through more information from our collector, the decisions will have to be made at the board level in terms of how we proceed. But if we don't apply for this grant, the money's gone. So our position is that we apply for the grant with a reasonable approach that we've seen work in other communities. We can't cover any additional costs for the collection vehicles themselves. That's not a part of the grant, but it does allow us to provide carts, and that would be provided standardized to all homes in Area A and Area C. It would allow us to provide kitchen catchers, which are small units that can be part of the education program to advise people on what they can place out for the curbside collection program. And then we're allowed to hire a contractor that would then apply the education programming and the delivery of the carts and kitchen catchers. So that's in the hundreds of thousands of dollars that we potentially could gain across the region by applying for this grant. So we're very keen to look at this and see how best we can use those funds. But the final decision on how we spend the money, what we spend it on, and the final cart configuration, even the education program, won't be known until we do public consultation and work towards getting this implemented for 2022.
As a quick follow-up, if I might, I'm agreeable with applying for the grant, but I guess I'm a little bit concerned that once we have all that in place, we have no bargaining ability with the person doing the picking it up. They know we've got to do it now, and there's no way we can keep that cost down. That's a little bit concerning.
Well, to answer that question, we knew this was coming. So in our contract, there is negotiation provisions. There's also a role for arbitration for us to proceed to binding arbitration to allow us to get pricing that's reasonable. But yeah, midstream contracts are always a concern. But we do have, that's why we're working with our member municipalities that are involved in this. So that if we do have to go to something as far as arbitration to get the adequate pricing, the fair pricing for all parties, that is something that we could better do by working all together.
On the contracts coming due.
Well, the contract's coming due in 2025, yeah. But not for a while.
Thank you. Go ahead, Director Bush.
There we go. So I'm in favor of the grant application, no problem. But did I hear that garbage would only be picked up every other week?
To answer that question, all I can point to is what other regions have done. So the majority of the population of BC have curbside collection of organics. So by population, that's Metro Vancouver, Capital Regional District, and Nanaimo, a bunch of other communities, including ones like Rock Creek, even Bridesville. So they have collection of the curbside organics. So what we see in these communities is every other week collection of garbage is what makes sense, because garbage that gets collected isn't any more stinky because you've removed those organics. So when these communities move forward with garbage collection, they're able to hold on to the garbage for 2 weeks and then collect it every 2 weeks. We have not made any commitment at the regional district level on what we're going to do, but what we can do is trying to get pricing in terms of what every week collection of garbage would look like, because that's generally a concern from elected officials. They want to understand whether they can collect garbage every week, because that's a major issue for their constituents. But what we would want to look at is the different pricing and analyze this and bring this to the board. And that's why we're moving forward on this, first with Area A and C, and then if the Campbell Mountain site is able to be delivered as a compost site, then we continue on consultation with Area B and those other areas that would be part of that collection program.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll go to CIO.
Yeah, so I think what Cam's saying is we just don't have that information right now, but in the end, it will be the board that decides the mechanism as to how we collect yard waste, garbage, and recyclables and food waste. That will all be information that our administration will contemplate and then bring forward for discussion by the board later on. At this time, what we need later on today is whether you want to apply for the grant or not.
Okay, thank you. Director Trainer, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I just have a question for Cam. Cam, I was wondering if you could remind us, I believe there's a provincial mandate to collect all residential food waste in BC. Do you know when that needs to be completed by? And do the same rules for curbside collection of organics apply to municipalities as to rural areas?
To answer that question, there is no, there's guidelines. The province of BC would request that we look at that through our solid waste management plans and look at that in terms of a goal and objective, but there is no mandate to provide curbside collection of organics. I think the province understands that where there might be curbside collection in some communities, very rural communities, especially northern BC, may never be able to collect organics. It's just not feasible for them to provide a collection program in very rural areas. In our regional district, that might include parts of Area H, which are very rural and very seasonal. So that there is no mandate to provide curbside collection. In terms of what would happen with municipal or regional, our position would be if we can keep consistency between the two, it would be easier for residents to understand the program. So as we worked with the staff of the District of Summerland, we understand that by working together on an education contractor for the rollout of a curbside collection program makes a lot of sense because we have standardized brochures, standardized materials that we collect. Both the District of Summerland and the Town of Oliver landfills are looking at very similar types of systems to collect residential food waste and treat it at the landfill. So we can work together, and that's really the key goal of this project. And the collaboration portion of it is to provide letters of recommendation for all of the grants that may be applied for through this grant, be it us, the Town of Oliver, the Town of Vesuvius Indian Band, or the District of Summerland, and then work together in collaboration so we hire good contractors and we have standardized approach for education across the region.
Can I have a quick follow-up to that? Is that okay?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. So, sorry, then just to be clear, then there isn't a provincial mandate that food waste must be removed? I thought that there was.
No, there's many places in British Columbia that may never remove organics because they're too small and it's too expensive.
Okay.
So there is no mandate. The mandate is, though, when we do our solid waste management planning, which is scheduled as a 10-year exercise in 2021 for us to start, and the board hasn't approved that, but that is in our work plan. That would be a key objective of that plan for consideration for public consultation. So that is the only requirement, is that it go to public consultation through the solid waste management planning process, and that is the only obligation the province places on us.
Okay, thank you. Director Holmes, go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you. So just for clarification, this grant application would be one application in partnership with the member municipalities, or would each member municipality be required to apply for grants separate than this one?
Just to answer the question and to speak to what my conversation has been with the District of Summerland, is District of Summerland staff have indicated that they would most likely apply for their own grant, but we would supply letters of support in terms of both grant applications, so that the regional district would get a letter of support from the District of Summerland, and then we would provide one to the District of Summerland to support their grant application. That seems to be the direction that your staff have indicated to us. Some of the issues that we see with working together on the grant application is the requirement to have the carts in play until 2034. So if we apply on behalf of the District of Summerland and you buy new infrastructure, you have to have that infrastructure in play for another 10 years. We as a regional district, though, would hold that obligation under our grant. We would have to have a contract in place for us to manage your obligation to us. So it gets a bit complicated in terms of those, what we would call like business relationships or some form of a partnership agreement. So we want to make sure that we understand that. We do have the time, and we are continuing conversation with the District of Summerland staff. But we would probably recommend the District of Summerland, if they're looking especially for capital, to apply for their own grant. And then if they do apply for education components, that we could also work together on the procurement side, and we could just hit a fair allocation in terms of the contractor costs for the education component. And any other kind of stuff like the kitchen catchers, which aren't really viewed as capital, and more educational. So those are things that we would work together on. But right now, we're also approaching the Town of Oliver and the Town of Vesuvius and the Vesuvius Indian Band And we're also bringing forward those ideas as well that they might want to apply for the capital portion of the grant. And we might then work together on the educational portion at a regional level. And those are some of the ideas that we're pursuing with staff right now.
Okay, thank you very much, Cam. Director Trainer, you have another question, or is that a leftover hand? No, okay, thank you. So are there any further questions or comments? We are going to see this later on the board agenda. Otherwise, we'd like to wrap up environment. Okay, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn environment. Moved by Director Roberts, seconded by Director Coyne Jr. All in favor? Thank you. Hands can come down. Anybody opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, have a look at your agendas, please, for Corporate Services Committee. I'm looking for a motion to approve the agenda as presented. Moved by Director Obrick, seconded by Director Bush. All in favor? Thank you. Hands can come down. And anybody opposed? Okay, that carries. We'll go to the one item on the agenda, and that's the 2021 Corporate Business Plan Strategic Planning, CAO.
Thanks, Madam Chair. So we had a workshop on November 13th, I think it was, 12th or 13th. And we were forming at that point what we wanted to see as far as our corporate objectives and our performance indicators for 2021. So I've drafted a new report that hopefully took into account what we learned at that workshop. And then I've had some further submissions from members since then. So what I want to do is just run this by you. I've introduced, and this may have even been since it went out on Friday, but I've introduced a new concept, just a pending list under some of the corporate objectives. Some of those projects, sort of planes in the air floating around up there, but we haven't actually got control of them. So if somebody else were to push the button on one of those projects, it would be a lot of work for us. So we want to keep them in mind, but we couldn't actually say that we're going to undertake them in 2021 because we don't have that sort of control over them. So I want to run through these and then I'll point out where we may have implications from some other projects. Again, the numbering system on your reports. So the first number is the key success driver. Those are the bins. We have 4 key success drivers that we lump our goals, objectives, and indicators into. The second number is the goal statement. The third number is the objective statement. And then the fourth number in the actual work plan is the performance indicator. So on our first one, so this one about being a high performance organization, that is our bin where we focus internally. And we talk about those things that we can do ourselves in order to make ourselves a better organization. And then the first goal on that is to be effective and fiscally responsible. And the first part of that is about financial management and reporting. And these are pretty standard for us now. It's about, some of those are legislative requirements where we have to do an audit each year. We hope that we get an unqualified audit. And then talking about the budget and our aspirations to them. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that one. A lot of those are just operational, and but we include them on the plan so that we report out to you on a quarterly basis, because that's one of the responsibilities of a board of directors, is that financial oversight. So this is where we give you our high level report on how we're doing, and then we will also bring in that variance report, or hopefully at some point a management discussion and analysis document, which is referred to in that plan. The second part of that is being an effective local government. So one of our problems right now, I mean, we're still in a growth spurt, and we have space problems, and it's only being exacerbated by the pandemic. So as we stretch out to get that physical distancing that's required now in all public places, and to reassure our staff that we're concerned about their safety, we are going to have to start looking seriously at where we're going to go as far as space. And I know we have a meeting with the city later on next week to talk about what their plans are. I think they're experiencing the same type of restrictions. So, but whatever it is, we need a short-term plan as far as space goes, and then we need a longer-term plan. So we've included that in our 2021 business plan, and there's also $30,000 in your budget to fund that expertise that would help us come up with something that we can report out to on the board. So that is 1.1.2.1. Then other than that, we know we need to do better cyber training for not only administration, but for the board as well. Anything that's coming in remotely, we want to be more cautious of. I know that Mr. Francisco is going to be reporting his information services assessment that we had been contemplating in 2020, and then also the cyber attack report that came out of the August ransomware attack on the regional district. So both of those are coming, and we want to make sure that they're on our plan to implement in 2021.
We do have a question from Director Bauer. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just, Bill, can we include the municipal directors too on that cybersecurity training? I think they would benefit from that too, and I don't think it would make a big difference to include them.
Yeah, I see Danny shaking his head over there, so I think that is probably a good idea. So we'll include that in the planning for it. And I'm sure it will be early on in the new year. So we go into the second goal statement under high-performing organization, and this is where we capture everything that we want to do as far as safety. As do all organizations, we have a joint health and occupational health and safety committee as part of the WorkSafe BC requirements, and we rely on them to develop an action plan for each year which we hold our employees accountable for implementing. So really this first one is talking about making sure that we keep our employees safe. There is and we were looking for metrics as to how we could best do that. And WorkSafe BC comes out with a report each year. They have a process where they have classifications of in various industries, one of which is municipal, and that gives us the opportunity to benchmark around the province. So what we want to do is be below the average. Obviously, we want fewer workplace injuries rather than more, so we want to be below the average, and then we can gauge our progress against that. And then the other thing, new for 2021, we do expect that the COVID restrictions are going to continue to apply at least for the first half of the year. And I think we're entrenching some of the safety precautions that we're all taking with regards to response to a pandemic. So we're going to continue on to implement those, and we'll give the board a report quarterly on how we're doing with that. And then it's an evolving situation, so we'll continue to update the board on that as well. The third goal under key success driver number 1 was this one about cultural change. This is where we do our staff perception survey on an annual basis, and then and we ask them what we can do better. Really what we ask them, what's wrong, and from there we change those into opportunities for improvement. And we develop an employee committee to work on an action plan on an annual basis, and then we do the survey again. And that's the one that I've showed the board where we have that 10-year history. So we're developing a really good trend line as to how we're doing on that. So we're going to implement that again. We just completed our 2020 survey, so I'll be into the board early in the new year with sort of the organizational results on that.
We do have a question from Director Monteith. Go ahead, please.
To the chair, is it possible to add the fire chiefs as a part of the staff perception survey?
I can talk to the chiefs. It would be up to them. I can force everybody else to do it, but we can certainly ask them.
Just to follow up, I think that might be a great idea, being they're managers of their departments, and if we're doing evaluations on them, it'd be nice to have that continuation through the process so that we're involving them as well as having oversight with them as well.
Oh, okay. We don't do evaluations on the fire chiefs. Okay.
Did you have another question, Director Monteith, or is that a leftover hand? Oh, leftover hand, okay.
So the fourth goal under key success driver number 1 is a new goal that we entered this year, and it's all about information technology. A lot of it came from previous years where we said we can always make better use of technology. We're sort of behind the curve, way behind the curve as far as social media goes. But also as far as the new technology that's coming out and the programs that are coming out. And then with our cyber attack this year and our IT assessment, we have a better understanding really of all of the opportunities that we have to improve our service to our citizens by making better use of technology and keeping it safer. So we've got a bunch of programs under this that are new this year. So clearly one that you're interested in and is how we're going to make the board work under the COVID restrictions and trying to get back into one space, but make it safe. So that is one of the objectives for 2021. And we're already looking into that, and we're clearly looking into the audio-visual capabilities of members attending. We also want to look at connectivity in rural areas. There's some really good grant programs coming out right now, not only from the government, but from some of the services as well. So we've got that on the plan. We want to really pay attention to this cyber attack report that we're going to be getting as far as security goes. It's been an enlightening experience working through this. So it'll be interesting for the board to hear the report from those experts as well. And that's coming shortly.
Okay, we do have a couple questions here. Director Bauer, go ahead, please.
Yeah, thanks, Jay. Bill, when you say investigate connectivity in rural areas, what kind of action and follow-up do you have in mind with that?
Well, there's some good programs out there right now, and the board's familiar with CIDIT. Well, there's a northern component of that in the province that is also providing grants provincially for local governments to explore rural connectivity. So, but it's really about working through the service providers that are out there already. And we've got a lot of areas that are still poorly serviced. So we just want to do a study on that and look at the opportunities. We're getting queries from lots of our rural hamlets out there. I think Eastgate was the latest one. A lot of people now want to live rurally and still work from home, but don't have that capability to do it. So that would be the intent. Okay. Key success driver number 2 is about customer focus, and it's the one that talks about how we treat our customers and looking at opportunities for improvement from an external perspective. And then we capture some of this stuff in our key success driver number 3 as well. But this is one, always we have this struggle helping our citizens understand what services each level of government provides And they don't care. We understand that. They just want the service. But they have to know who best to talk to in order to get a successful response. And we help them with that, but it's always interesting when we get our citizen survey results back, and when we ask what services they're most interested in or the biggest opportunities for improvements, it's always about roads, which we don't do, water services, which we usually don't provide, those types of programs that are somebody else's responsibility, yet they expect you as their elected officials to be making sure they get those services. So we think it would be a good idea to help them understand, first of all, who provides what, and we need to do a better job of communicating that out. And the other part of that is that we can do a lot better job of branding the services that we do provide, so that they have that type of understanding as well. So under promoting regional district facilities and services, I mean, the first one is that we want to develop a marketing program to promote what I've just talked about. And then one of our bigger projects is we know that the Similkameen swimming pool is important over in the Caramedas area. So we got some money in the budget this year to do a renovation on that. We're going to have to come up at some point with an idea of what we're going to do long term. The facilities, as all facilities do, are getting older. So, and they're expensive, and we've got a small population over there. So we need to figure out what we're going to do there, but we need to keep them operating in the meantime.
We do have a question from Director Bauer.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So, Bill, I see the pool is set for the last quarter. You're not going to do anything until October?
So under the when column on this statement, that is our hope for a completion date. So I'm not sure exactly what it is the guys have planned on that, but it would probably be done after the swim season. So they'd probably be working on it in Q3. But wherever you see a Q4, it just means we don't have a really good idea of when we'll be done. So we put the end of the year. The second part of this one is to engage citizens in the development of programs. So this is part of a citizen engagement activity. We already know that we're interested in the Lower Nicolet Improvement District. We got a grant to do an investigation as far as a transition from the improvement district over to the regional district on that. So there's funds in the 2021 budget for that. And then we also have just completed our 2020 citizen survey. And usually what we'll do is bring a report into the board with a series of recommendations that come out of the citizen survey. So that would be something we take on for 2021. And then on the pending list, we've got the Okanagan Falls Incorporation study. That'll be coming up later on today for consideration, so it's not in the plan yet, but if the board if the board approves applying for support of the province to do a study in Okanagan Falls, that probably would involve some administrative work by the regional district. So we'll put it on the pending list and see what happens with that. And then, of course, we'll see what the province does with it or how soon we get an answer from them if we submit that application. So that's on the pending list, but it would be added in if we get approval from the province. The second goal on external focus is about the provision and enhancement of key services. So this is again looking at what we need to do administratively. We've got targeted this year, we want to look at the invasive weeds and pest bylaws, trying to get more consistency between them to make it easier for our citizens to understand. And then we also have the iCompass program for our development services department. that should make it a lot easier to receive, process, and issue development and building permits. So we hope that's going to be coming online in early 2021, and then there will be some training and I'm sure a few kinks as we start to roll this out. So that'll be part of the work plan for 2021. And then the second objective under that is our transit future program. This is sort of a carry forward. We had these programs approved for 2020, and then because of COVID-19, BC Transit canceled all of their capital projects for 2020. So we're just bringing them forward in 2021. And then we've just received an indication that Princeton may be interested in talking about making their transit service into a regional program. So I've added that onto the pending list. We haven't had discussions yet, but we have an indication that it might be of interest. So we'll put that as a pending issue, and we'll start to collect some information and then keep you informed as to the discussions. And then we go into key success driver number 3, which is that one about regional sustainability. So we've identified the 3 pillars of sustainability as our goal statements. The first one is about being socially sustainable, and then we go into economic sustainability and then environmental sustainability. But under social sustainability, this is sort of where we lump our softer programs. Environmental sustainability is more about the hard infrastructure, but this is where we put a lot of our community services and development services projects, and these are more project oriented. The first one under social sustainability is we still have some work to do on our regional emergency management program. We've had some discussions administratively at the CAO group level, and we're going to be coming to committee early in the new year, but we still have some work to do on that. But that will come. We want to review the regional emergency response plan with committee in 2021. I don't think we've ever done that, so we want to get that up and have that higher level discussion about what our regional emergency management program is. And then I think everybody understands we have to update our pandemic response in the hazard analysis, making sure that we've adjusted for what may be an ongoing risk for us. And then we also have to update our business continuity plan, because when you get a cyber attack, it's just like in the boxing ring. Your plan works until you get smacked in the nose, and we got smacked. So we want to make sure that we update our business continuity plan as well. The second objective under social is about parks program. So, and I've added some pending projects on here, but initially what we have is that we want to do the 2021 phase of Work Park, and there's money in the 2021 budget for that. We want to implement the 2021 phase of Manitou, and there's money in the budget for that. And we had a regional parks and trails master plan budgeted for 2020, and because all consultation on these types of programs was interrupted in 2020, we're carrying this forward over into 2021. And then we want to investigate the benefit of worker campgrounds. So we've got Loose Bay, but we know, at least for 2021, that the Ministry of Agriculture is still going to be interested in providing more supervised worker campgrounds. I mean, everything's silent over there right now during the election period, but I expect early in the new year that's going to gain more urgency, so we'll spend some time on that.
Okay, we do have a question from Director Bauer. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chair. Bill, when I looked at the Trails Master Plan, I noticed I couldn't see the Similkameen Trails at all mentioned. Is there a way that we could include that?
Yeah, I passed that along to Mr. Woods, and we'll make sure that the Similkameen is better represented in the Trails Master Plan. And then we got a whole bunch of pending projects. So the acquisition of Sickle Point, the board's aware of, that's actually maybe done by now. But there was a court hearing this morning to consider the offer that was made on Sickle Point, and we'll get a disposition on that. And then we'll, from there, we'll see what part the regional district can play. The board has already given 3 readings to a borrowing bylaw for Sickle Point, so that's into the province right now for approval. And if that gets approved, we would test those waters with the Clean Parks and Rec service area in January. The other one is the Naramata Center Park in Area E. That's also waiting for approval on a borrowing bylaw. So that will be the same. The acquisition of West Bench Elementary School, that's been on our plan for the last couple of years. Really, we're just waiting on the school district to let us know if they're interested on that or not. So that's on the pending list. In Area F, the discussions with PIB regarding the KVR, they have a couple of different areas. One up in the West Bench area, the KVR through there is under addition to reserve discussions. And then the trail on Skaha Lake between Wrights Beach and Fleeton is also under consideration for addition to reserve. So those are areas that we're interested in improvements on, but talks are stalled until we find out where the disposition on that lies. I mean, we're sure it's going to go to the Penticton Indian event. It's just a matter of what their plans will be once they finally get it. And they aren't ready to talk to us about that yet.
We have a question from Director Gittins.
Great, thanks, the chair. It's just making sure you all can hear me okay.
Yes.
Thank you. With the PIB KVR trail upgrades through West Bench, so the acquisition to reserve has been in the background of this conversation for quite some time, is my understanding. And during that time, there have been periods where we have come to an agreement with the PIB in a partnership to maintain that trail. So I want to make sure we're not waiting for the acquisition to reserve to be completed before we move forward with trying to get some kind of a working relationship again with the PIB. Through the trail here in West Bench, there's sinkholes. I've got a resident who has a sinkhole that's half on private property, half on the KVR. We've all heard the news about people injuring themselves through the sinkholes. I just want to make sure that's a real priority to work with the PIB and see if we can do something while we wait for the transfer to reserve.
No, we have no agreement with KVR, with PIB on KVR maintenance or upgrades. It's more on an individual basis. When we get a complaint, we'll often go and ask PIB if they want to make an improvement. They've been good at that. Sometimes they have, sometimes they haven't. But it's really up to them. So we'll continue to do that part of it. But there is no agreement plan.
No, just as a follow-up, I thought that there was at some time, and maybe, I don't know if Mr. Woods is on the line, but I thought there was at maybe 4 or 5 years ago an agreement where we did maintain the KVR through the West Bench with the PIB in partnership with the PIB or in agreement with the PIB. Like there was, because I used to walk the trail all the time. So it used to be really well maintained and now it's not. So something has changed.
Yeah, probably it's been the leadership at PIB. I mean, it depends on, I mean, they had other issues that they were looking at and it was tough for us to sustain a relationship there. But I can guarantee you there's no formal agreement with regards to the PIB because I would have signed it. But we have worked cooperatively with them, and a lot of times it's really based on individual relationships at the administrative level.
I think we did have one sale several years ago that never moved forward. We had agreed to assist with the channel pathway with funding.
We definitely did on the channel.
And then I don't think that moved forward, did it? PIB was to do the maintenance, we were going to contribute funding and it.
Yeah, there was an agreement and we did budget, but as far as the implementation went, that had mixed results. But there was never one up through the West Bench.
Right. So it may be the one along the channel that you're thinking of, Director Gittins?
No, just as a follow-up, it really is just seeing the path here through the community deteriorate and knowing that someone somewhere at some time put some effort into it. And my understanding is that came through agreement from the RDOS and the PIB, but if that's incorrect, that's fine. I just don't want this pending list, meaning we're waiting for somebody to connect with us. I want the pending list to make sure that it's reviewed regularly through the senior staff team, and when there's an appropriate time to be proactive, that our staff is doing that. I guess that's where I'm coming from. I don't want to wait. I want us to be proactive in pursuing this. It's an incredible issue for our area, and I just would like to see some proactive with the new opportunity. There's new leadership at the PIB, so I think there's a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of work that REF is doing that could be enhanced with the PIB. Transit's, coming along. There's quite a bit. So I just want to make sure that we're not waiting and we're being proactive when we can be.
Yeah, we have other projects with regards to Aboriginal relationships in the plan, Madam Chair, and it would come through that. Let's face it, right now, PIB doesn't have ownership. They don't have tenure on the KVR through West Bench. They aren't going to be signing agreements on property that they don't own. But nevertheless, where we can get permission to go in and fix dangerous areas, we can look at that on an individual basis. The second goal statement under sustainability is on economic sustainability. And we only have a couple on this. We do want to start implementing the asset management plan. We're at phase 3 of that. The fourth phase was to get software. We held off on the appointment of an asset manager in 2020 because of the financial impact of COVID-19. But we are just now in the recruitment. I think just finished the recruitment process to designate somebody for that responsibility. So that will definitely take flight in 2021. And then we also need to look at our purchasing system. We're to the point now where there are efficiencies to be gained by taking a more centralized approach on that. So we're looking at that as well. The second part of that is on some long-range planning documents, and this is where you're going to jump in, Madam Chair. Right now, what we have is we're going to introduce a process into Area G for the discussion around an official community plan, and we have money in the budget for that. And we just want to wrap up. We're going to wrap up Mr. Garrett mentioned that earlier. We don't have that in the plan for 2021 because it's virtually done. It's just the approval process that we go through now. And then, as you had your presentation earlier this morning on the regional growth strategy, that will be coming to you, and I'm sure we'll have some good discussions on that before it's done. So that will continue on and is budgeted for in 2021. And you have a question?
Yeah, so we're wrapping up the Area A OCP review and amendments, and next up would be Area C and then Area E, but in discussions with Director Knodel, he has agreed to switch with me. We have had quite a request for OCP reviews for Area E for several years now, and Director Knodel was feeling he didn't need to act on his this coming year, so I want to make sure that we are able to get started with the Area E OCP review in 2021.
Yeah. So I'll check on that. I didn't see that in the development services business plan, and I didn't see it in the budget. So I got to check on that.
Okay.
And we'll see if if we can add that in.
Great.
Okay. The third pillar under sustainability is environmental sustainability. And I know we're running over time here, but I want to rush through this. I think I've identified most of the pending items, but we do have some work to do under solid waste management in 2021. Clearly, the first part of this is solid waste. So Cam has talked about that earlier on today, about curbside collection of organics and constructing the organics facility, and then working with Penticton to relocate their compost facility that's at Campbell Mountain right now. So those are all on there, and we've identified funds in the budget for those. The second part is the solid waste infrastructure upgrades. Everybody knows that we've got a series of contraventions at Campbell Mountain landfill that we're working on. So this one about leachate, we're on the contaminated sites register. I think we've got about one more year of work to do on that. We're doing some testing, trying to get off of that register. So that's again on the plan for 2021. The design operations and closure plan for all of these areas. So we have 4 landfills. Carameas is really a transfer station, so that puts into the Campbell Mountain landfill. But our 3 active landfills, we need to do design operations closure plans on. In fact, the one on Carameas is just done. We're just waiting for provincial approval on that. But there is money in the budget for those plans. We need to do the detailed design for a new entrance at Campbell Mountain, but we want to know where the organics facility, or whether the organics facility at 1313 Great Back Mountain Road is going to go. So that was postponed, but hopefully we'll get back on the docket for 2021. And then our contract for maintenance at the landfill is up in 2022, and with the size of that contract and with the amount of work going on at Campbell Mountain, we want to just test to make sure that it's better still to contract rather than to do it in-house. So what we would plan to do is to develop a shadow bid on that, because really the only way to figure out what the most effective methodology is to compete it. So we put it out for competition, and then we would develop an internal bid to see what the best mechanism is. So that is on our plan for 2021, so that we could be ready to participate in 2022.
Okay, we have a hand up from Director Gittens. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chair. I recognize the time here. We've got to start our board meeting soon. But with the pending list again, because I'm not really in agreement that West Bench Park acquisition should have been bumped off the list from November 12th. It's a carryover from 2020, but it's on pause just due to COVID and, of course, what the school district's dealing with. But if it remains on the pending list, is the pending list going to be reviewed like the rest of the action list will be? So we'll get updates on what's happening with the pending list, what staff have done on the pending list quarterly, like we do with the other, like with the business list?
Well, it'll show up on the plan, but until we're activated by the party that we need approval from, or an indication that they're ready to work on it, it's just dormant for us.
Okay, thanks.
And then we got wastewater treatment. So on the pending list right now is the clean wastewater treatment collection system. So we need to complete a few more steps before that would go out to the residents for approval. So that is on there. Our water systems. So we do have Sage Mesa on. We the board's aware that the province took that over. It's a privately held system, but the province took it over decades ago, and then we entered into a contract about 10 years ago to manage it for them. But the owners of the system seem ready to turn that over to the regional district. So even though we haven't signed the agreement on that, it hasn't come to the board yet, we believe that that is going to be an active program in 2021. And there's a lot of work to do in order to transition the system. So we've included that in there. And then the other thing, and a lot of this will be coming out of the IT assessment, but we have so many remote access portals coming into our system now. And some of them are from the supervisory control and data acquisition system, which is our wastewater plants and our water treatment plants. They all dial into our system. So we think we need to do a better look at that. We're going to do a master plan on it. And I think there's going to be some suggestions that come out of IT on that. And then the water systems rate review on our 9 systems is in the budget for 2021. I don't think there's anything else too interesting on there, Madam Chair. I think I'll just leave it like that unless there's questions. And what I'll do then is we'll put this into the form of a business plan. This is sort of the back end of it, but I'll put it in the form of a business plan, and I'll bring it into the board early in the new year for further discussion.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Are there any final questions or comments on this? I'm not seeing any hands up. If that's the case, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn corporate services. Moved by Director Bush, Director Coyne Senior seconding. All in favor? Thank you. Hands can come down. Anybody opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. So we've got about 4 or 5 minutes, and then we're going to get started with the board meeting, everyone. So I Okay, directors, good morning. We're going to get started with the regular board meeting. If you could please have a look at your agendas. This is your only opportunity to remove an item from the consent agenda. Did anybody have anything to remove from consent? Okay, I'm not seeing anybody. I am therefore looking for a motion to approve the agenda as presented. I see Director Bush, thank you, and Director Coyne Sr. seconding. All in favor? Thank you. Hands can come down. Anybody opposed? Motion carries, and I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda corporate issues. Moved by Director Robinson, seconded by Director Roberts. Call the question. All in favor? Okay, hands can go down. Anybody opposed? Motion carries. Great, that takes us to item B, delegations. B1, we have Leighton McCarthy and Kim Limburner to present to us. And just a reminder, folks, you also received an email with information from them as well. That was sent out to you. So I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to both Leighton and Kim. Welcome, and we look forward to your presentation today. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. And thank you. Hello, my name is Leighton McCarthy, and can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Okay, I'm sorry. I just wanted to make sure. This is somewhat new to me, but we're catching on to it fast these days. As I said, my name is Leighton McCarthy. I want to thank you all for including us on your very busy agenda today. And our purpose today is to bring you a current report, an updated report on what SOS Arts, which was formerly SOPAC, is busy up to at this point as we move along. We did submit a written summation to you, and that was to your administrators, that was sent out, I believe, yesterday to your inboxes. And I hope at some point each of you get a chance to have a look at that. It's quite fulsome and gives you a pretty good idea of where we're at. Mr. Kim Limburner, my associate, is leading our work right at the moment, as we are very much involved in our environmental scan. And he, although new to this valley, has been very much involved in similar work in Eastern Ontario and the Ottawa region. He comes to us really with an incredible background, and we are very fortunate as the South Okanagan to have him in our midst and leading this project along as we move. I'm going to turn it over to him at this point because I know we're very limited in time, and I would like him to fill you in as much as we can on our activities, and we will be available for your questions afterwards, of course. We are also attempting at this point to generate some support from the RDOS, given that our whole initiative is pretty well South Okanagan and Similkameen related. So I will turn it over to Kim at this point and let him take the rest of this presentation along to you.
Thank you, Leighton. Thanks, Leighton, and thank you very much for taking the time to hear about our initiative. As Leighton said, we did circulate a document earlier this week for your reference. I hope you'll take a look at it, but what I'll give you is a quick overview of what is contained in it. Our work is about gaining a comprehensive understanding of arts and culture in the region, in all corners of the region. And we've begun a process of gathering information to create a comprehensive database of information about arts organizations, cultural organizations and activities, initiatives, individuals, organizers, grassroots, all aspects of the arts and culture in the region. Where we're at right now is we're in the middle of our information gathering, and each day we seem to find out more and more things about what goes on in this region. Having come from outside the region only this year, it's fascinating to me to see the level of activity in the region and the nature of the activity, as well as the engagement of citizens in arts and culture here. It's quite overwhelming. To date, we've just in terms of venues and individual practicing artists, arts organizations like arts councils, built heritage, and so on, we've already captured over 150 unique pieces of data on the initiatives and cultural resources in the region. So speaking to you is also a way for us to expand that because obviously you will have your own points of view on the nature of arts and culture in your communities. And with each group we speak to, we learn more and we get more feedback, and we are able to build out our database, even make it even more comprehensive. In doing our work, we have kept in mind some of the things that came out of a series of workshops that were conducted by SOPAC in late 2019 and early 2020. And the workshops resulted in some ideas about what might be done within the region to help connect the corners of the region and bring benefits and improvements to the cultural landscape here. So what we've begun doing now as part of our information gathering exercise is reaching out to individual stakeholders and organizations, including the arts councils. And you'll see some information in the document about those arts councils. It's fascinating to see how active these councils are and how reliant they are on volunteerism. So they're doing an enormous amount of work, and they're doing it with very few resources. Certainly they're supported by the region and by the municipalities and even by the provincial government and by individual donors and members, but it really is quite impressive. And the question is, what can we do to improve conditions even more in the region as a regional initiative? We see some benefits coming from this idea of taking a more regional approach to arts and culture. And some of these include creating strengthened networks and relationships across cultural bodies and cultural stakeholders, getting greater leverage for the regional cultural sector overall through increased bargaining authority, as there are greater opportunities in larger numbers and a regional involvement in arts and culture, attracting more investment, more provincial and federal support, engaging community funders and businesses, increasing buy-in and investment in the arts and culture overall. The other benefits include increased organizational capacity for those cultural organizations that already exist in the region to help them do their work. This could include things such as more paid staff and capacity building and so on, and increased audiences and engagement, with increased outreach and promotion leading to greater community awareness across a range of demographics, publics, growth of audience from outside the region, that is tourism, strengthening of regional touring circuits, and greater opportunities for venues, presenters, organizers, and artists. And our thrust here is not to create another organization that will then put another layer of bureaucracy on the region, but rather to help increase and stimulate connections and to improve promotion and coordination of all the wonderful programming and activities that are going on in the region. In terms of what we're going to do next, we're going to continue to complete our interviews with stakeholders and gather information. To date, we've already met with 2 of the 5 active arts councils in the region, those being Oliver in Oliver and in Summerland. We're going to continue that and speak to the Princeton Community Council, as well as Penticton District Council and and Osoyoos. So what we think, we don't yet know what it is that will come out of this other than a tool for the community itself, that is a large data bank of information. But we think that there may be some positive outcomes and some possible next steps. And these could include a series of regional forums or roundtables on arts and culture. It could include the creation of a regional cultural network. It could include a broad and comprehensive coordinated regional calendar of events. It could include a report on the regional economic impact of arts and culture. It could include a regional cultural plan. And I did note that in your bylaws concerning regional growth, that in bylaw 2770 from 2017, you do address the need for a cultural plan for the region, and maybe even some big things in the future, like a regional arts endowment fund. So we'll continue to speak with stakeholders, including the Community Foundation and others, as we go about our business. We hope to provide to you in late first quarter of 2021 an update again, if you're open to receiving that. And we will hopefully complete our environmental scan by the end of the third quarter of 2021. Keeping in mind that that environmental scan will not include something like an economic impact study. But I think that might be one thing that could be a follow-on from this. We would really appreciate very much your continued interest and possibly even your support in the form of a liaison, so that we can have access to someone on the board that we can share information with and seek guidance from. I think that's all that I really have to tell you right now. Again, you do have a document. If you do have the time to look at it, we would appreciate that very much. And Leighton and I are available for questions.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Kim and Leighton. Are there any questions from the board? Taking a look here, not seeing any questions at this time. Oh, Director Holmes, go ahead, please.
Thank you. I was trying to find my raise hand button. Thank you for your presentation. I wanted to ask you, you referred to the economic impact of the arts and culture, and that there's no real study or data regarding that. How an idea, how would you go about measuring the economic impact of culture in the region?
Can do quite easily through research, and that is to look at the number of, say, grants or the amount of funding provided, say, by provincial and federal governments to the region. So in other words, what is the investment? The nature of the activities managed by arts councils and other arts organizations, such as ticket sales, attendance numbers, et cetera, relative connections with businesses and sponsorships, and what kind of investment that is generating, numbers of tourists, and so on. So I think it's quite a big project to develop an impact study, but with partners such as the tourism offices, the regional board, the municipal councils, the Community Foundation, and the chambers of commerce, I think together a plan, or rather a study, could be put together, and I think a lot of worthwhile information could come out of that.
If I may say a word on that as well, it is not within our scope as a committee at this stage of the game to be able to take on such a project as this, because, as Kim points out, it is rather on the large side. It may indeed involve some sort of monetary asides as well, and we don't know what that is at the moment. But before we would ever embark on something like that, we would bring it to the RDOS and indeed whatever other councils we may need in order to gain support for such a venture as this. As I said, it's a very large, and as Kim pointed out, it is a large undertaking and something we couldn't even consider until such time as our environmental scan is complete.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments at this time from the Board of Directors? Okay, I'm not seeing any hands up. So if I'm correct here, Kim and Leighton, we're going to see in late Q1 next year, probably another update from you folks, and around Q3 an environmental scan, and in the future possibly an economic impact study. Is that correct?
Yes, and we will share the draft of the environmental scan with you as a means of both keeping you informed and validating before we would consider making it public. So I just wanted to make sure that you understood that we will keep you in the loop all the way along.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. So we look forward to those future updates, and I understand your one request really today is if the board could consider having a board liaison that could communicate with your team. So that's something that the board can discuss in the future, and we would get back to you on that.
Thank you very much for that.
Thank you very much, and thank you all of you.
Great. Thank you very much, Leighton and Kim, for joining us today and providing that update. And we'll hear from you both in the near future.
See you next time.
Bye-bye for now.
Thank you. Okay, directors, that takes us on to Section C, Development Services, Building Inspection, C1, Building Bylaw Infraction at 7005 Indian Rock Road in Area E, CAO.
Thanks, Madam Chair. So Sunset Acres out in the Indian Rock area of Area E seems to be in non-compliance with a number of permit areas that we have. So they've got some buildings on there that they haven't got building permits for.
Hello? Hello? Yes, it is.
Oh, hang on, directors. We've just got feedback from somebody's line. We okay, Danny? Okay. Go ahead, CAO.
We were going to bring forward a request to put a notice on title and seek injunctive action on this, Madam Chair, but we understand you have a different point of view.
Yes, thank you. So, directors, I did receive last night, and it did go out to all of you this morning, some additional information that came from the property owner, a watercourse development permit area report from the QEP dated October 2020. So we do have some additional information, which leads me to believe that the property owner is trying to remedy the issues that have been brought forward in this report. So due to that recent information being provided, I'd like to make a motion at this time to postpone this recommendation until the second meeting in February so that we can give some additional time to the property owner to work with the RDOS on the issues that are in this report. So that is my motion, and I'm looking for a seconder on that. Director Bush is seconding it. Thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments on this one? Okay, I am not seeing any. I will therefore call the question on the motion. All in favor? I see hands going up. Hands can come down. Thank you. And is anybody opposed? Okay, not seeing any. Motion carries. Thank you very much. We're going to move on to D. Development Services, Rural Land Use Matters, D1, Zoning Bylaw Amendment, 5081 8th Avenue in Area D, CAO.
Thanks, Madam Chair. So this is the Skaha Housing Society. They're contemplating the addition of 30 units onto their affordable housing project in Okanagan Falls. And they need some amendments to the current zoning on it. They're looking at increasing the maximum density, at reducing some of the setbacks and reducing some of the parking requirements in the current zone. So we're recommending that we give this first and second reading and bring it to public hearing before the board on January 7th. Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go to Director Oberg on this one.
Yes, thank you. And can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you very much. I have just a brief comment and then I'll make a motion. I want to thank staff for all the work they did on this matter. It's real important to the community. The phase one ground was broke on October 4, 2018. The ribbon cutting was October 3rd, 2019. This is phase two. The Housing Society has done a spectacular job. Full occupancy in the phase one, lots of community appreciation, significant contribution to the community development. This was referred to the Advisory Planning Commission, and that meeting was in October. November 10 was the date of the meeting. The Advisory Planning Commission, very, very supportive of the Housing Society work and this particular project. They did ask me by motion to make sure the board was advised that they had concerns because there's 3 amendments. The town center zoning bylaw was done. Some may remember, I think we had third reading roughly February 2019. This is asking for 3 amendments. I think all 3 are in good order and are reasonable. But in the future, we may want to take a look at that bylaw and see if there's room to tweak it a little bit. The conversation at the Advisory Planning Commission was excellent. It was thorough. They made 2 motions which were defeated because of issues that pertain to details that were interesting, but I do not think in any way materially cause concern. And so for all those reasons, I just want to say I would like to make these administrative recommended motion. I just thank you all for giving consideration to that little bit of history. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. It looks like Director Monteith is seconding that. Are there any questions or comments, concerns on this one? I am not seeing any hands go up. This one is a rural vote. Okay, I will call the question then. All in favor? Okay, hands can come down. Was anybody opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you very much. We will now move on to D2, proposed OCP and rezoning amendments 4850 Naramata Road in Area E, CAO.
This is a 40-lot subdivision application. So, and the proposal for the OCP and the zoning bylaw is to bring it from resource area to small holdings. So from that 20 hectare requirement per lot to the 1 hectare. So it's a significant change. We're concerned that it may not meet the requirements of the regional growth strategy. It's not contiguous to the high density area in Naramata. There's some gaps there. And there's just not enough information with regards to how they would treat sewage or water. So we think it's just too early, Madam Chair. We're recommending that this application be denied.
Okay, thank you very much. This is in electoral area E, my district, and I would like to move the administrative recommendation. I can certainly speak to it. I see a seconder by Director Bush. Thank you very much. In your packages, there are quite a few responses. I think we've had roughly 38 or so responses. That there was an accidental duplication of those responses, so you probably got roughly 40 extra pages there, but it's just a duplication of the same letters that are in there. We do have serious concerns on this. The public has stated many, many concerns. We are moving forward with our RGS review, and of course, I'm trying to get going on an OCP Area E review and update, which is really important at this time. We don't have a growth boundary, and many citizens feel that this is outside of what should be our growth area in Area E. And this land does have very high environmental values. They're looking at adding 40 septic tanks to that property. And it does cross over creeks. We have about 3 creeks there. It crosses, the road would cross about 5 times over the creeks. And so citizens just have serious concerns about the impact to the water there, what will happen to groundwater with the blasting. We've certainly seen issues with other developments, not only in Area E, but in other areas. And it just seems that this densification level is not acceptable by the community. So after that being said, I do want to check to see if the applicant, the property owner, or their agent is on the line who would like to speak to this denial. Danny, do we have anyone? We do? Oh, we have Donna?
Yes.
Okay, I see Donna Butler's name there. And Donna, if you wanted to unmute and go ahead and speak to this, please. Are you there, Donna?
I'm here.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Yes, good morning. Thank you to the board and staff for making this available to me. We'd like to talk to you about the development. Ecora Engineering are the agents for the owners. Their names is Naramata Holdings. And I do have a presentation here. I'm going to try to pull it up myself and see if I can go through it. Here, sorry. Oh, sorry, I'm not too good at this. A little patience here. There it is. Can you see the PowerPoint?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to spend a few minutes to go through what we have proposed, why the owners chose this option, the local context, what we heard, and now what are the next steps that we're suggesting here. So the subject property is on North Naramata Road. It's a 300-acre parcel divided by the KBR, and it is designated in zone resource area, which is a 50-acre parcel. Property was purchased by the owners in 1990, and at that time the community plan was small holdings. We discussed with the owners 2 options here. One was the 1-hectare lots with the private sewage system. And as you know, that is the minimum lot size for private sewers on site. And I think we felt that this rural approach was more compatible with the character of Naramata than the alternative, which was smaller lots with the community sewer system that has been seen recently in the community. So it was a choice to look for more of a rural option. And it was proposed to rezone the lower 150 acres and designate it to small holdings for the 1-hectare parcel size. It is a significant development, so we see it taking 5 years to get going and another 5 years to sell out. So it's a project for the 5 to 10 year horizon. Public access to the KVR was offered. We did environmental study, and I'll show you the results here of what we found. This is a proposed development. Naramata Road's down here at the bottom. This is the KVR up here. Here's the proposed 40 lots, the water reservoir up here. We are proposing to hook up to the Naramata water system and supply fire flows and domestic water. The environmental assessment has been done by a core biologist, and we see some high value lands up in the top corner along Bearish Creek and Robinson Creek. There's some moderate value lands on the site, but most of the property has been rated as having low value. And the property has been logged in the past. That may have something to do with that. So the next thing, as part of our process, we wanted to look at Naramata as a whole and get a sense, what's the context of this development? And we've put together a map just to give you an idea of how this property would fit into Naramata and how the land supply in Naramata is currently available. I think this is a very interesting plan. This is the property up at the top of the map in orange, and this is, of course, the community of Naramata. I think the first thing you can see here is the ALR is a huge factor in Naramata, important for its character and economy, but also limiting the development options. So looking to what is actually available for development in Naramata, the town site is down here. And as you know, without a community sewer system, the capacity and ability to densify the town site is quite limited, as is the ability to subdivide the land south of the village, not meeting the 1 hectare policy. A couple other features here is the KVR, which runs right along the top of the community. That's a very important boundary in Naramata. And looking at what's been happening in the community over the last 50 years, you can see all of these single family lots that have been built over many years. And now we're coming up to the very top of the zoning. And here we have the Outlook development, which is right here. And then we have Kettle Ridge just down below here. And what's interesting is once these developments are complete, the supply of single-family land in Naramata will be used up. Kettle Ridge has an additional 27 lots yet to be developed. I've looked at the inventory of vacant lots in here, and there's about 95 lots at Outlook, Kettle Ridge, and in the adjacent lots, subdivisions that are vacant and have potential to be developed. There's other areas that also have been identified. One here is Narrawana Road, where 40 lots have been zoned for half-acre subdivisions. And then there's Grace Estates in the north end, just below the subject property, with 11 lots. Add this all up, we get a future supply of about 145 single-family lots. And based on the average of 18 units per year, this supply will last for about 7 years, and then the community will really be out of supply for single-family development. I think this map does show you that this north area is really one of the largest areas available for development in the future that is below the KVR. So yes, we had some public consultation, a public information meeting online October 8th, and Advisory Planning Commission October 26th. And yes, we know that there's a lot of opposition to this development. And the concerns are development and construction traffic, drainage, existing and post-development downstream environmental impacts, wildlife, creeks, the size of the development, the neighborhood character, similar impacts of the Outlook and Kettle Ridge subdivisions, community plan is out of date, and questions about the benefit to the Naramata water system. So I'd like to just give a few responses here, because I think, again, the owners felt that the rural proposal was more in keeping with Naramata and would overcome concerns about the recent small lot developments on the hillsides. And we can say there are definitely technical approaches to these development issues, engineering issues, environment, servicing, drainage, all of these concerns can be dealt with. But we are aware that the neighbors are not in favor of this development. And normally we would go back to the drawing board to explore other types of development options for the property. that deal with these issues, such as reducing the footprint, different size of lots, reduce the road construction. In other words, look at different options of how this site could be developed to provide needed housing in the community, but also respect some of the concerns that people have had. We also have, you'll see in the package, agency comments from a number of provincial agencies. The first one is the Flynn Row Lands and North Natural Resource Operations, who have concerns about high and very high conservation ratings, critical habitat, and riparian areas. Well, we are absolutely aware of these issues. I do pull up a map here of Naramata showing the high value habitat areas. As you can see, it's pretty well all of the hillside lands above the community. Our property is right here. So yes, there are high values on the property, and there are many values on adjacent properties. Community plan has a process to review these values in new development by doing on-site assessments. And Ecora biologists have gone to the site, have identified the high value properties, parts of the property, and well aware of the critical habitat here. So yes, there are environmental values. Most of the site has a lower rating than the province is suggesting, but of course, should any development occur, this will have to be explored in a lot more detail. Interior health, again, are advocating for compact, complete, walkable communities. They talk about environmental protection and, comments about water and sewer systems. Our reply is that yes, we support compact, complete communities. Naramata needs a community sewer system to achieve that type of development. And of course, water and sewer regulations will be followed, and the development does comply with the 1 hectare lot size. Other comments are coming from the Ministry of Agriculture and the Land Commission. I think the summary is properties not in the ALR, and the Commission believes that Naramata Road provides a sufficient buffer to the adjacent farms. There may be some issues with the traffic on the road. So these are all good points, but they're not significant issues that we cannot address in the development phase. We do recognize that a new growth strategy is underway and that Naramata is designated as a rural growth area. And based on the regional growth strategy as it's written today, boundaries of growth in Naramata will be determined in the Naramata Community Plan, and agreed that the growth containment boundary is needed for the community. Just to start back here, when we started this project in 2018, the community plan for Naramata was scheduled to be done in 2023 and 2024. So we felt it was, in order for the owners to move ahead, we would need to be applying to amend the community plan. It was as it was a long ways off for the new plan to be prepared. We appreciate now that the board has given priority to the Naramata community plan, which will be starting next year. So we based our application on the criteria and goals of the existing Naramata community plan. And we do support the new Naramata community plan and agree that its review is needed. And it's important to consider a development such as this in the context of the new community plan. So we, again, normally we would try to come up with some solutions that we might get public support for, but we do appreciate that all the issues of Naramata, including this property, will be the focus of the new community plan. Therefore, the owners are requesting that the application for the 40-lot rural subdivision be referred to the new community plan project, and that development options for the site be considered in that process. And thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you very much, Donna. Did anybody have a question for Donna before we wrap up with the property owner's agent? Okay, I'm not seeing any. Danny, are you able to take the, oh good, the presentation's down, thank you. I have a clearer view of the board. I'll ask again, any further questions or comments? Yes, Director Coyne Senior, go ahead, please.
Does that mean that they're withdrawing the request for today?
I wasn't clear on that. Donna, go ahead, please.
No, what we're asking is that the board refer this application into the community plan process where we think it is appropriate to deal with it in the community plan as opposed to deal with it today. Asking to defer it to the community plan.
Okay, so right now we do have a motion on the floor that this application for the zoning amendment be denied. It is certainly something that we would be discussing in the OCP review, this property, and many other areas of potential changes in the OCP. CAO, go ahead, please.
Could we get Mr. Garish, Madam Chair? I'm not sure we can defer. I think we have to give an applicant an answer.
Yeah,
Either yes
I
or
thought
no.
so too, but Mr. Garish, are you on the line?
I am. I mean, from staff's perspective, it would be an odd request to defer, and you know, we're potentially. I know what Ms. Butler said, but the board hasn't made a decision on the OCP schedule yet. We are hoping to have that at your next meeting, but theoretically, the area E is the next OCP to be reviewed. That might not be completed until mid-2022, so we potentially have an application sitting on hold for 2 years with no guarantee that the outcome of the deferral will assist or be detrimental to the application. So
They should reapply, Madam Chair.
Right, and yeah, that would be my suggestion, and there's certainly possibly some potential changes that the applicant may want to consider based on the feedback that has come out of the consultation to date, but that will also come out of the OCP review. Director Bush, did you have a question for the agent?
Yes, so what can they do there now with the present zoning?
Yes, the present zoning is 50-acre lots, so they can create 5 or 6 50-acre lots and use some of the land for agriculture.
Thank you. Any other questions for Ms. Butler while she's on the line? Director Bush, did you have another one? No, your hand just went down. Thank you. Anybody else? Oh, Director Bush, your hand's back up. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, so was the zoning changed from the time it was purchased?
Yes, the property was purchased. It had a small holdings designation, and the owners were in the midst of subdividing the land. The zoning was changed to resource area without their support, and that was in the 90s. And so they have held this land since that time, looking for an opportunity to develop the land.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Garish, did you have anything to add to that zoning change? That was from the 90s?
Sorry, I'm quickly trying to scroll through some historic mapping that we have just to confirm if that was the case. But I mean, even if it is, the board set a different direction 20 plus years ago for this property. So I'm not sure how relevant the zoning at the time of purchase, given the board's more recent direction on what the zoning should be.
Okay, thank you. Are there other questions for Ms. Butler? Okay, I'm not seeing any at this time. Okay, thank you. Well, thank you, Ms. Butler, for your presentation today. Now we'll go back to board comments and questions for deliberation. Are there any further questions or suggestions here? I could add a few comments further that the board may not be aware of. We talk about densification and the need for a sewage system for the community, and you're probably aware that in the budget and plans for 2021, I have a liquid waste management plan. Phase 1 and Phase 2 will be started through our Public Works Department. We're currently just wrapping up an assessment around the Okanagan Lake area of the village core to do with any issues from septic systems, and then we'll move into the liquid waste management plan. There is definitely a request for community sewage system in the downtown core of Naramata for some of the future commercial developments that are being looked at, as well as homeowners that could join into that system. If that was the case, it would potentially create more densification opportunities in the village core. This development proposal right now is North Naramata Road, so it's north of the village core, and it is out at the outskirts. And I think the concern really at this time is with potential water damage. We've seen the issues that have come from Kettle Ridge and Outlook with stormwater management, but also when there's extensive blasting, what can happen with underground water flows. And across the road from this property are agriculture properties, and those properties extend out to the silt banks, and we know that we've seen issues before with silt banks with crumbling, and so we want to be really careful about what could occur with water damage, with underground water, as well as surface water, with stability issues. So I think that's been one of the major concerns from citizens regarding this proposal, to have 40 more lots put in above North Naramata Road, on the east side of North Naramata Road. So any further questions or comments? We do have the motion on the floor that this application be denied. And that is a rural vote only. Yes, Mr. Garish, you had a comment to add?
Thank you. I just had a chance to go through the historic bylaws for Naramata, and according to the 1995 zoning bylaw, the minimum parcel size for subdivision was 20 hectares at the time. So it seems to be a consistent 50-acre, 20-hectare requirement for the past quarter century, at least.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Anything further from the board before I call the question?
My hand down. Oops.
Okay, I'm not seeing any. Okay, I'll call Director Canolo, go ahead, please.
I'm just wondering if it's possible for them to reapply after the OCP if they're turned down today.
Yes, they'd be able to do that. Thank you for that question. Any others?
Can I just say, Madam Chair,
Yes.
Director Canolo sounding very, very good today.
Yeah. Yes. Did you fix your fiber optics connection in the past hour? You're sounding good now.
Adam did a little work for me. I'm not sure what he did, but it seems to be making a difference.
It has made a difference. Excellent. Yeah, you're getting the thumbs up from some people here. Okay, if there's nothing further then, rural vote, I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Okay, and hands can come down. Anybody opposed? Okay, not seeing any, motion carries. Thank you very much. We'll move on to D3. Letter of concurrence, Freedom Mobile Area F, CAO.
Thanks, Madam Chair. So Freedom Mobile wants to put a tower up on Mount Nikwala, which is right adjacent to, well, you can see it from Highway 97 as you come into Penticton. It's at the end of Max Lake Road. That's where it's serviced from. So they've done their consultation, and they're now asking us to give them a letter of concurrence that they would then send into Innovation, Science, and Economic Development Canada for approval to develop their communications tower.
Okay, great. I'll go to Director Gittins.
Thanks to the chair. I just have a quick question because around the letter of concurrence, is it meant for us to deliver or approve the letter of concurrence before they begin construction of the tower?
Could you repeat that, please, Director Gittins?
Sure. Is it meant for the letter of concurrence to come from this board before they begin work on the tower?
Yes, so this would go in prior to approval by Canada.
Okay, thank you. I'll go ahead and move the recommendation, please.
Okay, thank you. Is there a seconder? Director Coyne Jr. seconding. Thank you very much. Any questions or comments on this one? This is a corporate vote. Director Monteith, go ahead, please.
To the chair, was there much resistance from anyone on this? I don't see any feedback or anything.
Yeah, I didn't see any letters of opposition. Mr. Garish, was there anything?
I'll pass it over to Joanne to provide an answer.
Okay.
We received no correspondence on this issue, and we did hold a WebEx public information meeting, and no members of the public attended that meeting. We received one email inquiry just asking a question, but no further written correspondence.
Okay, thank you. Director Gittins, you have your hand up. Go ahead, please. No? Oh, okay. Any other questions? Okay, this has been moved and seconded and is a corporate vote. I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, hands can come down. Anybody opposed? Not seeing any. Motion carries. Thank you. We'll go down to D4, zoning bylaw amendment 1500 Blakeburn Road in Area H, CAO.
Thanks, Madam Chair. So this is an application for a zoning amendment on what appears to be a really remote lot out in Area H. It was developed as a shared lot, so there's 8 property owners, and they developed a sort of a guiding camp with a lodge, and I believe a single family residence as well. And now they want to build a house for each of them on this piece of property. So we typically don't like shared lots, but we're recommending that this be, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. I'll go to Director Bob Coyne on this one. Go ahead, please.
Recommendation number 1, to have first and second reading today and proceed to public hearing at the board.
Okay, so thank you. Director Coyne is moving alternate number 1. Is there a seconder? Director Obrick is seconding that alternative motion. Thank you. Go ahead, Director Bob Coyne.
Okay, now this sounds a little weird, this proposal, but these people have gone to extensive lengths to try and make this work. They've tried to get do subdivision on this property. It's prohibitive cost because of the road going there that Highways wants to make them bring it up to provincial standards, which would be $1 million plus to do said road. So that's why I'm supporting this. The community of Coalmont has been very supportive of it, and I think it'll be a great addition to our community out there. We've also done this on the other part of this original homestead right across the road and down a little bit, where we did the same sort of a process, which seems to be working very well. These guys have formed a corporation with procedures for dispute resolutions, sales processes. So I think that they've covered all their bases. They've done an incredible amount of work to get to this point, and I would like to support them.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Director Coyne. I do see that we have in our packages many letters of support for this property. Are there other questions or concerns? This is a rural vote. Okay, so we have alternative number 1 moved and seconded, and I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Okay, thank you. Hands can come down. And Director Monteith, there we go. Thank you. Anybody opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you very much. We're going to go down to Section E, which is Public Works. E1, award of RFP for utilities truck cabinetry and crane, CAO.
We've budgeted, Madam Chair, to purchase a utility truck for our water and sewer crew. And this is the one that they'd use in order to have a crane on it and they'd be able to take it out to the remote water systems and wastewater systems that we have. So we purchased a truck, and then this is the award of a contract to build the body for the truck to Normar Industries Limited for $62,660.
Okay, thank you. Is anyone willing to make this motion? Director Spencer Coyne's moving it, Director Overich seconding it. Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? Director Knodel, go ahead, please. Nope, okay. Anybody else? This is a weighted corporate vote. Okay, I'll call the question then. All in favor? Hands can come down. And anybody opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We'll go to E2, application for Clean BC Organic Infrastructure and Collection Program, CAO.
So we had the introduction to this this morning, Madam Chair, about the grant opportunities for organic collection and for food waste collection and organic facility to host that food waste. So we have 2 reports now. This first one is on the curbside collection part of it. So we want to submit an application to Clean BC Organics for funding for the purchase of carts, kitchen catchers, etc., for electoral areas A and C. And we have to indicate where we would take our third of the cost from for that. So in this case, we've indicated that we may have to borrow. If we do have to borrow, we would go ahead through the borrowing bylaw process, and which would not require a cent because it's in the solid waste management plan. And then also that we support Summerland, Oliver, and Osoyoos and the Osoyoos Indian Band in their projects to do the same thing. And then we would also get letters of support from them. So we're making that recommendation, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Looking for someone to move that. Director Robinson, you're moving it?
So moved.
Okay, thank you. Is there a seconder? Director Holmes seconding. Thank you. Any questions or concerns? This is a weighted corporate vote. Okay, I know we discussed it in committee. I'm not seeing any other questions. I'll go ahead and call the question. All in favor? Okay, thank you. Hands can come down. And was there anybody that was opposed? Director Knodel, you're opposed, is that correct? Yes, and Director Johansson, are you opposed, or is that left over from, I think yours is left over. Yes, okay, so Director Knodel opposed. Anybody else opposed? Okay, thank you. Motion carries. We'll go to E3, application for Clean BC Organic Infrastructure and Collection Program, Campbell Mountain Landfill Compost Facility, CAO.
So this is the other side of it, Madam Chair, is to develop that facility at 1313 Great Back Mountain Road as our northern organics processing and treatment facility. And we'd like to submit this to the Clean BC Organic Grant Program.
Okay, thank you. It looks like Director Robinson is moving this. Thank you. Is there a
So moved.
seconder? Seconder, Director Olbrich, yes, thank you very much. Any questions or concerns with this one? Once again, it's a weighted corporate vote. I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, thank you. Hands can come down. And anybody opposed? No, motion carries. Thank you very much. We'll go to F, Community Services. F1, Canada Cultural Spaces Fund Grant, Naramata Museum, CIO.
We're recommending that we submit an application to Canada Cultural Spaces Fund, Madam Chair, for the restoration of the Naramata Museum.
Okay, thank you. Is anyone willing to move this recommendation? Director Robinson and Director Spencer Coyne seconding. Thank you. Any questions or concerns? Director Monteith, go ahead, please.
To the chair, how do we decide which projects are chosen? I know that Naramata has a museum, but Okanagan Falls has a museum. I believe like other communities do as well. Cleveland does. So do we go through like a cycle of choosing projects, or is Naramata shovel ready? I'm not sure. I've heard much about the Naramata Museum, where it's going, but I know like Cleveland, we're looking at doing a study this year to see if we can twin our museum. I don't know. I guess I just don't understand how projects get brought forward, or is there a project already there in Naramata?
Well, I know Mark Woods is on the line and he could probably add to this, but we did do a building assessment in Naramata of our different regional district owned buildings. The museum is one of them, and it's been on my list for quite some time. They do not have insulation. So in the winter, there is zero insulation from the cold. They can't operate in the summer. There's too much heat, which is not good for the artifacts to have the extreme heat and the extreme cold. So it has been on the list for quite some time that we are trying to actually insulate that building for the volunteers and the artifacts that we have there. But Mr. Woods, did you want to add anything else to that?
I guess, Madam Chair, I think I would add that this would be a good example of why we want to have that comprehensive asset management plan in place, which clearly articulates what the RDOS owns and its state. So as you mentioned, we did do a building assessment on that building, which we own, and indicated we had some pretty significant issues to address. But also, when there's opportunities brought forward to us, we'll certainly bump those up to the board for consideration when they're made available. The case of Cleveland, yeah, we're aware that there's some work going on there, and it's a leased building. KCA owns the building itself, and the RDOS is in a lease situation. So we certainly have a focus on the buildings that we own as one of our priorities.
CAO, go ahead, please.
And just point out that this is a 50% grant opportunity, Madam Chair, so the electoral area would have to be willing to pay the other half of that.
Correct, thank you. Director Gittins, go ahead, please.
Thank you to the chair. I think part of the question that I heard from Sabrina is not the merit of the program or what the grant's going to be used for, but it's just how do we as rural directors know when this opportunity is coming forward? I think I've asked this question before too. How do we know when these opportunities are coming, and how are we making decisions? And I understand the asset management place is probably a good place to start. With the 50% funding, it's in the report, it says that the other half is going to be paid by the gas tax. And I always thought we could not do that. I thought we couldn't use government money to support government funding.
Mr. Woods, are you able to answer that one?
Yeah, each funding stream is different. And so whenever we see a new opportunity, we'll look at the criteria that's associated. Some of them will indicate that no other government money is available. In this case, it's not a problem to do that. So we're seeing more and more gas tax funds are not being allowed to use, but in this case, it's not an issue.
Great, thanks.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, this motion is on the floor. It's a corporate vote. We'll call the question. All in favor? Thank you. Hands can come down. Anybody opposed? Okay, motion carries. That takes us on to G, Legislative Services, G1, Incorporation Study for Okanagan Falls, CAO.
We received a letter from the Okanagan Falls Community Association, Madam Chair, indicating that they would like support for an application to the province to consider a study for investigating the incorporation of Okanagan Falls. So we put that forward for discussion to the board.
Okay, thank you. And in your package, you can see a motion that has been put forward by the Okanagan Falls Community Association in that report. I'll go to Director Obrick to see if he would like to make a motion or wait on that. Go ahead, Director Obrick.
Yes, thank you. Through the chair, I just want to make a couple brief comments and then I will make a motion. First, I want to thank staff generally and specifically Legislative Service Manager Christy Malden. We did have a meeting by WebEx recently with the Community Association that was very helpful. She outlined process and I just want to extend that was much appreciated by the Community Association. Secondly, a great amount of thanks to the Community Association itself. This group has been actively engaged on not just this issue, but many issues in the community, from finding a grocery store to beautification, cleanup, betterment of the community generally. And I want to thank them for the amount of work they've done. There's tremendous community support. Thank you to the community, the support and the participation. It's a broad base of participation, a very broad base of support. In the information provided, you can see there was quite a history. This is just another step forward in a process that has been ongoing for many years. I want to add that I have had over 22 emails of support in recent weeks, not a single one specific to this request, to this motion, not a single one in opposition, 100% support for this motion from the community to myself. Likewise, the Community Association has received broad support in addition. I have spoken to them. They have not had a written opposition to this motion, but they have had a communication, one or two, where concern was perhaps raised, but not a single written opposition. I want to share one email with the board, and this one affected me personally quite a bit. It was dated December 1. It was sent to me. Some of you may know that former Director Bill Schwartz stood against me in the last election. I last spoke with him in January of 2019 regarding the passing of alternate director Tom Stife, but we don't speak much. I feel compelled that I should reach out to him and speak to him, but his email says, and I'm going to read it, it said, it is way past time to get the study done and vote to incorporate, and this is Bill Schwartz. It touched me because we don't always agree, and yet we agree on many things. And this is just one example of broad-based support in the community generally. And it just shows the history on this as we go forward. So my first comment is just a big thank you to so many people who've participated from staff on through to community members. And so what I would like to do is make the motion that is referenced in the report. There's two motions. The Community Association put this language forward. It's based on a motion that was used in northern Okanagan, up Blind Bay and Sorrento. And there's been a lot of work done on this. So this is a step forward. I thank everyone for listening to those words. And if I could make the motion that incorporates those two steps or those two motions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Director Obrecht. It looks like Director Monteith is seconding that. So the motion is that the board support an incorporation study assessing costs and benefits as outlined in the recently accepted 2020 Economic Development and Recovery Plan for Okanagan Falls, combining a boundary analysis report for Area D and community engagement initiatives, and further that the board requests the Minister of Municipal Affairs to provide restructure funding in 2021 and 2022. Any questions or concerns regarding this? Director Bush, go ahead, please.
Yeah, so I want to know, and I'm not against the motion if Area D is paid for the 50,000, but does this mean that under governments we're all paying for it, or how does that work?
CAO?
In the past, that those governance study funds have been topped at $50,000, which is all it's costed us before. So there would be administrative time, but I don't think any out-of-pocket funds, Director Bush.
So I think Director Bush is asking, is that all of us paying into that, or is that an Area D cost?
What cost?
The 50,000.
No, it would come from the province. We're asking for a grant.
Good.
Okay. Yeah. So can I ask, what's the population now of Area D? Because when they applied for it last time, there was Area D and I were together. So is the population cut in half now?
Yeah, I think it's around 5,000 for Area D and probably 2,500 of that in Okanagan Falls.
Yeah,
Okay.
Director Obrecht has 4 fingers up, so I think he's saying 4,000 roughly people. Yeah, he's got a thumbs up.
Okay.
Thank you. I'll go to Director Knodel next, please.
Not against this motion by any means. I'll be watching it closely, given the spiraling administration and service costs in the West. A lot of people are going to be interested in this. But the difference for, say, areas A or C is we have a town to build on, and I'm just wondering if there's a policy or an administration problem. Can a regional area form a district municipality without forming a town site first? Or would they have to form a town site and then move towards district municipality status? And I assume that the boundaries would change, and that would change the population base also. And that could have some issues. I'm just kind of wondering about the legalities there. And also a warning that given the propensity to grow in that area, it's a growth area for sure. They'd have to be very cautious that when they hit the 5,000 mark, they'd be going through the same difficulties that Asuyas and Oliver is currently struggling with, that extra cost of 70% on the policing. It's a phenomenal cost to add to a small community. So that's just a beware thing. But I will be watching this one very closely. I'm quite interested in it. And I thank Director Obrecht for bringing that forward. Thank you kindly.
Okay, thank you. CAO, did you want to answer that question? I think originally there was a question from Director Knoll. Do you have to have a town municipality first, was your question, I think, Director Knoll, before you could go to a district municipality?
They're just different forms of local government, so it's whatever the applicants apply for.
What about boundary? Does the boundary for Area D change then, or would it change, and what happens to the areas that fall outside if it does?
So as I understand it, this application would be just for the incorporation of Okanagan Falls, so they would have to draw a boundary around Okanagan Falls or wherever they thought a logical boundary might be, and then the economic study would be based on that geographic area.
So if I'm correct, if that then came to fruition, there would still be an Area D for certain outlying areas.
Well, I think we'd have to do a boundary review in conjunction with that, and I think may come up with some options as to what to do with the remainder.
Okay, I'm going to go to Director Obrick next. Go ahead, please.
Yes, and just to help clarify, perhaps a friendly amendment to the motion. This would be for incorporation of the entire Area D as a municipal district. That clarification, I think, is key here. The boundary analysis report is part of that process. To answer Director Knodl's question, you don't have to do that town site or some stepping stone towards incorporation. The municipal district model has been decided upon based on a lot of work done in research and in regard to Summerland and Clearwater and other experience throughout BC regarding incorporation, including, as most of you might recall, the UBCM meeting that we had with the ministry staff. And I had meetings with the Minister Robinson, as she then was. The boundary analysis, and Director Knodl, all his comments have been considered. The community is very mindful. The purpose of this study is to answer a lot of those questions so that people, when it goes to referendum, can make an informed decision. In no way is this the decision. This is simply process where the minister can put funds forward to enable the proper study, so voters then can have the information needed on a whole host of questions, all of which Director Knodl include his remarks, but there will be others. The boundary analysis itself is fascinating because we have a very important issue with Vassal Lake. I think Vassal Lake is wrong to be split with Sundial in Area C and the remainder in Area D. That analysis, I think, should be done regardless of incorporation. Upper Carmi is the other area that probably needs the most consideration. I've spoken to many members of that community. They'll be dealing with, I think, 4 choices on boundary analysis. Number 1, stay in the municipal district of Area D. Number 2, perhaps join Penticton. Number 3, perhaps join Naramata. And number 4, something else. And that could be the leftover Area D, but that might be too small. So this is what the study is for, is to engage in those kind of questions, provide that kind of information, and allow the community, which is very much in support of this study being done, allow the community to be able to do this work. And again, a lot of you will know that this came before the UBCM in 2014. There was the $50,000 reference is regarding the 2014 study, which resulted in the split of Area D to D and I. That is a stepping stone along this process. The $50,000 is not the cost of this study. If Blind Bay Sorrento is any indication, $100,000 is the amount that the minister provided for that purpose. This pathway, this process, this isn't new. It's been done in BC over the years many times with other communities. This is the process that is generally followed. Again, thank you to Legislative Service Manager Christy Malden for her assistance in this regard. Thank you as well to the ministry staff who've helped. But this is a process, and Director Knodl's remarks, all fair, all good remarks, and thank you to Director Knodl.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Director Holmes.
Yeah, thank you. Certainly, when you look at the incorporation of Lake Country back when they did it, I'm not sure if they really had it at the time, and I think you could probably argue they don't really have a town site right now, but they seem to be getting along quite fine. I just had a question for Director Monteith, if I may. You know, if we're talking about a district municipality and coming from Summerland, I think there's a lot of virtues to district municipalities, but I was just wondering if Caledon has any interest in being a part of this process, to seeing if its people would be interested or not in being part of a district municipality with OK Falls, or the divorce is complete, so to speak.
That's okay. Thank you for the great question. I do not see any conversations, heard any conversations where Kaleden has considered that beyond the governance study. I know during the governance study, there was conversations around that and thoughts around that. And when the governance study was released and the recommendation became the separation between area D and I into D and I think that was the direction the residents were heading in, from what I understood, read, conversations. I don't know if there's an interest in going back the other direction. I have not heard any conversation in support or against. I think residents of Kaleden are happy where they're at. But I'm sure that they're watching to see what their neighbor does. And I'm not going to rule that out in the future, but I don't see him being an active part at this point.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions or comments? Director Bush, go ahead, please.
Yeah, so I deep down, I'm just not in favor of Area D leaving the regional district, so I'm going to vote against this.
Okay, thank you. Director Obrick, is that a leftover hand you've got up? Yeah, okay, thank you. Anybody else with a question or comment? Otherwise, I'm going to call the question. Okay, all in favor? Okay, hands can come down. There we go. Okay, thank you. Anybody opposed? We have Director Bush opposed. And that's the only opposition. Motion carries. Thank you very much. That takes us to CAO verbal update.
Oh, nothing from me, Madam Chair.
Okay, that takes us to Chair's report. I don't have anything new to update other than to just acknowledge that we're seeing a greater spread of COVID. And while we've been having this meeting, I received an email from Penn High School. So my son's school now has a COVID case, and we know that Princess Margaret High School does, and Summerland, Giants Head, and some others. So it seems to be rapidly spreading. So everybody stay safe, and I'm certainly going to try and reduce the amount of times I'm in and out of this office and try and do more from home if I can, just to help not spread anything further. That takes us, folks, to director's motions. Did anybody have a notice of motion for today? Having a look here, I'm not seeing any. Okay. We will move on then to board members' verbal updates. Did anybody have an update from their area that they'd like to give the board today? Yes, Director Gettens, go ahead, please.
Thank you to the chair. I just actually wanted to thank Anarchist Mountain Bear Society, Zoe, Cam, I think it's Danny. We had a really successful opportunity to work together around bear carts and getting bear carts into the neighborhood of West Bench. So I just wanted to put that shout out, and it was really nice to work with another area on something that's important.
Great, thank you very much, Director Gettens. Anybody else with an update or comment to provide at this time? Not seeing any. Our next board meeting is in 2 weeks on December 17th. Okay, not seeing anybody else with a hand up. I am looking for a motion to adjourn. Moved by Director Robinson, seconded by Director Bush. All in favor? Thank you. Hands can come down. Anybody opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. See you in 2 weeks.
Well, actually, we got